You are an unforgivable big demon. Yet you have raised 7 stunning and unparalleled female emperor disciples. For hundreds of years, you have caused chaos and misery to the world. Now you are trapped in the sword array of extermination by your 7 female emperor disciples, activating the supreme law to extract your memories of sin, summoning your crimes to the 3 realms of gods, humans, and demons. Your eldest disciple, Empress Nangon, looked at the sword array and coldly voiced the doubt she had buried in her heart for many years. Why did you accept me back then, only to slaughter my entire family? It's simply insane. You just casually admitted your guilt, but I will never regret everything I have done. As soon as these words were spoken, the crowd became furious, with everyone shouting to kill you immediately. At a critical moment, Empress Xuanguang stepped forward to stop everyone. When everyone thought she was acting out of old feelings, she simply wanted to know why her husband met such a tragic end at your hands. She sent out her life-treasured artifact, the Haotian mirror, in an attempt to extract all your memories and find clues to her husband's soul. As the Haotian mirror emitted a dazzling light, the beginning of your memories appeared before everyone's eyes. Your parents were wealthy merchants, and they doted on you since childhood. You were supposed to live a peaceful and happy life, but everything was shattered at the age of 7. Once, Ngong's son, Lungfeng, came to seek refuge with your family. Your father, out of gratitude, not only took him in as an adopted son, but also entrusted him with managing the family's estate. Seeing this, the Empress Nangon Ling Luoshui was surprised to discover that this Lungfeng is her father. But why would he appear here? They thought the entire family would prosper, but half a year later, an unexpected change occurred. This Lungfeng was originally an assassin who killed Ngong's entire family. The grown-up Lungfeng, masquerading as someone else, appeared honest and simple on the surface, but harbored evil intentions. In just half a year, he took control of all the family's assets and even bribed the steward. All the servants in the mansion killed your father on a dark and stormy night. He had long coveted your mother's beauty, so he used your life as leverage to force her into submission. To save your life, your mother had to endure such humiliation. After secretly sending you out of the mansion, she took her own life with a knife. Seeing this, Empress Nangon was extremely shocked, realizing that you were the true victim, and after reaching adulthood, you reclaimed the Lang mansion. You just took back what rightfully belonged to your parents. Even the cultivators sighed, realizing that the Dark Demon Emperor was actually the true victim. Perhaps the reason for causing chaos in the world later on was due to being harmed by evildoers in childhood, leaving behind psychological trauma. Misfortune never comes alone. When you escaped outside the city, you was also captured by an old cultivator. There were also 7 other children with you. The old man treated you all very well, providing good food and drink every day. He would select the most outstanding children to soak in the medicinal bath, claiming it was to help them build their foundation. As disciples, such an opportunity for immortality is rare in 100 years. You strive to show yourselves in order to become stronger and seek revenge. Strangely, every year, one companion would disappear. The master said they had gone out to gain experience after achieving success in their training. But you always felt that something was wrong. It wasn't until one day, 3 years later, when it was your turn to soak in the medicinal bath that you realized it was not immortality, but rather hell. It turns out that the old man had been using you all as experiments in order to refine a high-level body refining technique. Inside the medicinal pool, you endured excruciating pain, but with your great vengeance unfulfilled, you refused to die. So, you persevered against death with sheer determination. The old man chuckled, realizing that you were an extraordinary talent with exceptional aptitude, and thus decided to take you as his disciple. 8 years quickly passed, during which time you spent nearly every day in the medicinal pool, almost giving up every time. You would silently recite your parents' names in your heart. When your father was killed, the image of your mother being humiliated was vivid in your mind. During these painful 8 years, you secretly mastered all the alchemy techniques, secretly practicing cultivation techniques at the same time. Under the old man's unawareness, reached the peak of body refining realm. Finally, in a medicinal bath experiment, you pretended to have an accident, creating a false death, and successfully escaped from the demon's lair. The people outside the Haotian mirror saw everything you went through and were all too shocked to speak. This Haotian mirror's live broadcast has already displayed the images in the myriad of worlds, meaning that people from the 3 realms can all see your memories. Everyone sighed in succession. If they hadn't seen the memories of the Dark Demon Emperor, they wouldn't have known that there was such a scum in the immortal cultivation world. Someone put forward a very bold hypothesis. Could it be that we have always misunderstood the Dark Demon Emperor? After all, from the current images, you haven't done anything wrong at all, but soon someone raised doubts. The Dark Demon Emperor is cruel and unkind, having slaughtered countless immortal cultivation sects for nearly 1,000 years. These bloody facts are right in front of us. How could it be a misunderstanding? After hearing these words, everyone agreed one after another. The scene continued to play, and the Empress Nangon watched you endure everything with deep emotion. Her entire family was slaughtered by you, and she persevered with a single-minded desire for revenge. Fortunately, she was relatively lucky. She met that brother at the most difficult time, although she didn't know what he looked like or what his name was. But her brother had always been protecting her, teaching her cultivation. She had deep feelings for this mysterious brother, but then he suddenly disappeared, as if he had never existed. Thinking about this, she couldn't help but feel a little lonely. Looking at you through the Haotian mirror, having experienced hardships, finally returning to your hometown. You unexpectedly found a group of bullies, bullying a little girl. You easily dealt with the bullies and saved the neglected Shui from your childhood. Seeing how strong you were, she pestered you to take her as your disciple and even invited you to stay at her house. But when you arrived at her house, you were stunned. This place with the sign of the Lang family was your former home, wasn't it? And the current head of the Lang family is none other than Lang Feng, who killed your parents and took away your family's property. Over the years, Lang Feng did not recognize the grown-up you, but after finding out that you were a cultivator, he tried every means to deceive you and obtain your techniques. During the 6 months living in the Lang family, your relationship with Lang Ruoxue became even closer. But you also became increasingly tormented. Every time Lang Ruoxue smiled and called you master, you felt guilty towards your deceased parents. Outside the Haotian mirror, everyone could see your struggles and pain during this time. People sighed in disbelief, never expecting that the cruel and ruthless Dark Emperor also had such a side. And the Southern Palace Empress, Lang Ruoxue, looked even more moving. Her happiness at that time had always been built on her master's pain. But after struggling for a moment, she woke up to the fact that even if her father was an irredeemable scum, her mother and other family members were innocent. This sin is unforgivable. The scene in the Haotian mirror continued to play, with Lang Feng trying to deceive you into imparting immortal cultivation techniques. She and her wife drugged you under the pretext of delivering pastries. Little did they know, due to your long-term medicinal baths, you were immune to all poisons. However, you didn't rush to expose them. Instead, you pretended to faint, to see what tricks they were up to. In fact, his wife had long discovered that Lang Feng had harmed countless people over the years. It was just that now she was helpless, but it was time to put an end to it. She first hid her sleeping daughter, Lang Ruoxue, in the cabinet. Then, when Lang Feng arrived, she paralyzed him with a nerve-relaxing powder and then ambushed him with a dagger. However, Lang Feng was quite powerful after all, and he had some strength left. In the struggle, his wife was accidentally hit and passed away from then on. At this point, when you wanted to stop it, it was too late. In the critical moment, you promised the dying wish of his wife. You promised to take good care of his disciple, Lang Ruoxue, in the future. Then you revealed the truth to your enemy, Lang Feng. Do you still remember the Xiaofu that you destroyed, causing the family to be ruined and people to die? Coincidentally, at that moment, the young empress, Lang Ruoxue, also woke up, came out of the cabinet, and happened to see her parents bleeding in front of you. The criminal Lang Feng is doomed this time. Before dying, she came up with a poisonous plan, telling Lang Ruoxue that she killed her mother and now wants to kill her father, making sure Lang Ruoxue seeks revenge for her. The little girl witnessed this scene and harbored seeds of hatred from a young age, until now. Only those outside the Haotian mirror understand everything. It turns out that all of this was an illusion, and you are the real victim. Empress Nangon, Lang Ruoxue, is completely soulless. It turns out that everything was her father's lie. Her unforgivable father is the mastermind behind her mother's murder. Other immortal leaders all sighed. Although you later became the Dark Demon Emperor who brought calamity to the world, he never owed anything to Empress Nangon, his female disciple, from start to finish. Everyone in the world can curse the Dark Demon Emperor, except for Empress Nangon, who has no right to do so. The Empress of the Yin side, watching Empress Nangon emotionally collapse, showed no change in expression. When she encountered you injured, your behavior was as kind and benevolent as it appears in the image. But since you found out that you are the legendary Yin body, everything changed. You exposed the darkness and evil within your heart. Not only did you confine her, but you also absorbed the Yin energy from her every day. Your cultivation was also for self-preservation, leading to the slaughter of hundreds of people in her entire village. You now appear kind and generous, but ultimately, tempted by power, you became a demon like Lang Feng. At this moment, Empress Nangon's eyes lost focus as she looked at you in the sword formation, tears filling her eyes. After speaking, she suddenly rushed into the sword formation, startling everyone. Empress Xuanwang immediately realized that Lang Ruoxue was trying to take advantage of everyone's carelessness to rescue you, but unfortunately, she had already anticipated this. So she deliberately opened the sword formation, trapping Lang Ruoxue inside along with it. Lang Ruoxue knew that she was no match for the other 6 empresses alone. She just wanted to accompany you, her master, but she had one regret. That regret was not finding her mysterious brother. If she could see him one more time, she would die without regrets. At this point, Empress Xuanguang continued to activate the Haotian mirror to show your next memories. After Lang Ruoxue escaped from the Xiao family, she was targeted by a group of ruffians. To protect her from harm, you wore a mask and saved her. In Lang Ruoxue's heart, there was only hatred as she looked at the young man wearing a mask in front of her. She asked him to accept her as his disciple, as she wanted to avenge her parents. In fact, you also had this intention. At this time, due to the previous medicinal bath, toxins had accumulated in your body, and you were already close to death. Teaching her the cold blood technique would not only allow her to kill you and end her hatred, but also give her the ability to protect herself in troubled times. As time passed, Lang Ruoxue unknowingly fell in love with you, her elder brother. After 10 years, she finally achieved something, came down the mountain for revenge, and made a promise with you that as long as she returned after avenging, you would be together for life. And at this moment, you also know that it's time to let go of the hatred. After Lang Ruoxue came down the mountain, you took off your mask and appeared in front of her. After being pierced by a sword, you fell into the cliff. Seeing this, the Empress Nangong completely broke down in tears. It turns out that for thousands of years, she has been searching desperately for her brother, only to find out that the person she has been longing for is the enemy she has hated all her life. But what use is there for regret now? It was she who personally led the 6 empresses to capture you and turn you into what you are now. At this moment, outside the Zhuxian sword formation, the Empress Taiyin let out a sigh. It was she who saved you when you fell off the cliff and brought you back to the village. The memory of that moment undoubtedly feels like rubbing salt into her wound. If she hadn't saved you back then, the tragedy that followed wouldn't have happened. However, she wants the world to see what kind of ruthless and unforgivable evil person you truly are. After being pierced in the chest by the Empress's disciple, you fell off the cliff, landed in the river, and drifted for a long time. You were saved by a girl named Wen Yaxian. Everyone recognized from the scene that this person is the future Empress Taiyin. She brought you back to the village and kindly treated your injuries. Unexpectedly, while you were recovering, a group of bandits arrived. They were attracted to Wen Yaxian's beauty and wanted to take her as their concubine. At a critical moment, you wielded the firewood cutter like a flying sword and wiped out all the horse thieves. Wen Xian was saved by a hero, and because you are so handsome, she secretly admires you. To ensure her daughter's safety in the future, Wen Yaxian's parents want her to become your apprentice. As you spent time together, feelings gradually grew, and you became tired of the chaos of the martial arts world, feeling that a simple and peaceful life would be nice. But human hearts are unpredictable. In the face of huge interests, so-called true feelings seem so vulnerable. The Moon Empress sneered, because afterwards, it was the beginning of sin. After she embarked on the path of cultivation, she awakened the extremely rare lunar goddess body. This constitution emits the aura of the moon, the best healing and cultivation method in the world, a sacred object. And it's because you coveted this constitution of your own that you killed hundreds of people in her village, and kept her imprisoned by your side. She doesn't understand why you did this. Clearly, as long as you spoke, she would have given you her life. Why use such a cruel and inhumane method? At this point, the Empress Nangong retorted. She didn't believe the master would do such a thing. Everything was fabricated by the Moon Empress. Since the truth was revealed years ago, Lang Ruoxue has stood by your side. She believes that all the rumors about you in the world must have hidden motives. The Moon Empress laughed in anger. Fabricated? Are you saying that everyone in her entire village committed suicide? With Wen Yaxian awakening the Taiyin divine body, she can now heal you, allowing the toxins in your body to be relieved. In order to be with you, the Empress Taiyin took the initiative to soak in the medicinal bath with you, sharing skin contact. The Empress Nangong is furious, feeling that Wen Yaxian's behavior is shameless and deliberate, pretending to be weak and flirtatious in front of the master. The Empress Taiyin's expression is somewhat unnatural, admitting that she did have some ulterior motives in the past. Now exposed in front of everyone in the 3 realms, she also feels inexplicable shame. Although Wen Yaxian awakened the Taiyin divine body, her mother is not happy at all. One day, she quietly pulled you into the room and revealed a huge secret. It turns out she comes from an ancient immortal cultivation family. The first-generation ancestor awakened the Taiyin divine body, reaching the level of a saint in his lifetime. However, after a martial arts defeat, he fell into the demonic path. The Taiyin divine body was contaminated and became the Taiyin demon body. Since then, female descendants of the ancestor have a chance of awakening the Taiyin demon body when they embark on the path of cultivation, turning into inhumane killers. Now seeing her daughter also awaken the Taiyin divine body, she worries about her future falling into the demonic path. I hope you can persuade my daughter to stop practicing cultivation. At this moment, everyone in the three realms watching from the Haotian mirror was stunned. According to their understanding, the Empress of Taiyin is indeed the Taiyin divine body, and has never experienced any demonic possession. Could something have happened, related to the Dark Emperor? At this moment, Empress Taiyin Wenyaxian was also stunned. She had never heard of the term Taiyin demon body, and had always believed herself to be the Taiyin divine body. Seeing the disbelief on your face, Empress Nangonlong woke up with a cold smile and said, "See, I told you there must be a hidden truth." The young Empress Taiyin Wenyaxian, although puzzled, still pretended to agree, but still resting behind the scenes. As the memories continued to play, everyone began to realize that something was amiss. Last night, you unintentionally arrived at the mountaintop, and as soon as you reached the summit, you smelled a strong scent of blood. Walking over to take a look, you were instantly shocked. In front of you was a huge pit filled with animal corpses, a gruesome and brutal sight. You realized that something was wrong. You had greatly underestimated the severity of the Taiyin demon body. Its demonic nature can influence the host, making her unaware of her actions. In Wenyaxian's view, she was saving these animals, but in reality, she was brutally slaughtering them. After understanding everything, you quickly rushed towards the direction of the village. Thick smoke was already rising there, and a sense of foreboding surged in your heart. When you arrived at the village, it was already too late. The village was engulfed in flames, and bodies were scattered all over the road. Your body was trembling. This period of time in the small mountain village was the most carefree for you, with no scheming or competition. Everyone got along harmoniously. You hurried back to the Wen family, hoping that there was still time, but to your dismay, when you returned, you saw two bodies lying on the ground, with Mr. and Mrs. one severely injured. Wenyaxian was peacefully sleeping inside the house, unaware of her actions, but the blood on her body betrayed her. Before Mrs. Wen passed away, she begged you not to tell anyone about this. She is a kind child, please save her. Outside the Haotian mirror, the Empress of Taiyin couldn't believe it. Seeing all this, she was numb, emotionally devastated, unable to accept that none of this was real. The Empress of Nangon laughed heartily. "I told you, Master is not capable of such inhumane acts. Now the truth is out. It's really satisfying." The Empress of Taiyin shed hot tears, her expression a mix of madness and sorrow. She looked at the Dark Demon Emperor inside the immortal slaying sword formation. Is it because of a promise to her mother that you unhesitatingly bore all these sins? A group of immortals below are all looking at each other. I didn't expect there to be hidden truths. The Dark Demon Emperor is actually being wronged again. They are all dumbfounded. Come on, we all want to see the Dark Demon Emperor's life full of evil and deep sins. Isn't this Dark Demon Emperor a big villain? How come he only does good deeds? At the same time, some people have raised objections. Perhaps, the Dark Demon Emperor is undergoing a transformation at this time. Being a fallen demon, doesn't the lunar demon body have its own demonic nature? Maybe he transferred the demonic nature to himself. In order to explore the truth, everyone keep watching, inside the Haotian mirror. When Wenyaxian woke up, she was surprised to find an iron chain tied around her neck, and her hands were tied. And you were sitting across from her, with a cold expression. She was completely puzzled. Why did her always gentle and kind master become like this? Looking at her deceased parents in front of her, when Yashian's emotions collapsed, she trembled all over, and lost her composure. But you told her an even more cruel fact. Not only that, but Wen's father, mother, and hundreds of people in the village all died tragically at your hands. When Yashian widened her eyes, as if struck by lightning. She couldn't believe that her beloved master could do such a despicable thing. But you just remained silent with a cold face, tacitly approving of everything, letting this useless person silently bear all these sins. You suddenly changed your usual behavior, fiercely telling Wen Yaxian that since discovering the Taoing energy in her body, which could help me dispel the curse, I have developed the idea of making you mine, killing all other informed individuals, and keeping you by my side forever. This is the best way. Wen Yaxian couldn't believe that all this time, she had actually fallen for a heartless demon who kills without blinking. From that moment on, she went from extreme love to extreme hatred. Her love was deep, and so was her hatred. In her agitated state, her eyes turned completely black. Seeing this scene, you smiled. You had promised Wen's mother that you wouldn't tell her the truth and that you would find a way to save her. Sure enough, after pushing her spirit to the extreme, the demonic nature within her emerged. At this point, Wen Yaxian had lost control of her own consciousness and had become the ancestor who possessed the first generation of Taoyin demonic body. After that ancestor died, they used curses to control all subsequent descendants. As long as the descendants awaken the Taoyin divine body, their demonic consciousness will awaken from the bloodline, ultimately controlling the descendants' bodies to achieve resurrection. You just want to be resurrected, don't you? Occupying my body is the demonic body for you. The ancestor looked disdainful, asking if a poison and trashy body was worthy of their choice. But you just laughed. You have no choice. Either continue to stay inside my disciple's body, or I will forever imprison her and prevent her from practicing, or choose to possess me, which offers a glimmer of hope. The demonic ancestor can only compromise. Boy, after I possess your body, I'll show you how I can torture you. When Wen Yaxian woke up, she saw the look of hatred in her eyes. You feel as if you've been pricked by millions of needles in your heart. In order to save her, you can only make her hate you. If Wen Yaxian finds out that she killed her parents and everyone in the village, she will definitely collapse without any will to live, and then she will be completely controlled by the demonic ancestor. As long as the disciple can live well, what's the harm in bearing all the sins alone? Outside the Haotian mirror, tears welled up in the eyes of the Empress Wen Yaxian. The truth was revealed. It turns out that the master did all this back then to save her. But who can understand the pain of the master, carrying a lifetime of infamy and sins? She was even imprisoned in the sword formation by her own disciple. She can hardly imagine how you've survived all these years. At this moment, within the sword formation, the Empress Nangong's expression turned icy. If the master hadn't tried to save you, her consciousness wouldn't have been manipulated into becoming the Dark Demon Emperor. All of this is your fault. The various immortal cultivators below all sighed at your tragic life. The Empress Xuanguang remained silent. She originally wanted everyone to see how heinous your life was, but unexpectedly, it ended up earning you praise and sympathy from the world, which made her quite unhappy. If it weren't for you, how could she and her father be separated in life and death? Inside the Haotian mirror, after Wen Yaxian regained consciousness, looking at you in front of her, she was in unbearable pain. If it weren't for her bringing back, her parents and the entire village would not have died. Now, it's too late for anything. She has given up completely. This cruel and heartless man is no longer the dashing man she loved. Thinking of this, she is determined that she must not die. Seeing this smile, my goal is finally achieved. Turning around to leave, before going out, you deliberately left the key on the table, giving her a chance to escape. Seeing the obedient disciple running down the mountain at night, you finally let go of that strength. At this moment, tears are streaming down your face. The pain is too much, but who can understand your pain? Seeing you crying in pain, the Empress of Taiyin outside the Haotian mirror was already in tears. It turns out that the master loves her so much. At this time, the furious voice of Lang Ruoxua in the Zhuxian sword formation scolded, "This heartless and ungrateful woman. The master has sacrificed so much for you, and yet you don't know how to be grateful. You are truly ungrateful." Hearing Lang Ruoxua's harsh words, Wen Yaxian shuddered all over. With a raise of the hand, the situation changes dramatically. A huge celestial hand appears in the sky, fiercely striking the Zhuxian sword formation. And just when everyone thought that the South Palace Empress was about to be struck to death, the always superior Empress of Xuanguang roared out, "Dare not to save anyone in front of me." Even the Empress Tianhua on the side smiled and said, "Your acting skills are truly exquisite." Hearing this, the Empress Taiyin's face changed slightly, and she reached out to grab the giant hand of the original Emperor City, taking the Empress Nangong, who was as cold as snow, away. After doing all this, the graceful figure of the Empress Taiyin also disappeared into the void. It was only then that the people below suddenly realized. It turns out that just now, the Empress Taiyi and the Empress Nangong had staged a play. Their purpose was to take advantage of the opportunity to rescue the Dark Demon Emperor, but unfortunately their plan was noticed by the Empress Xuanguang. Therefore, the Empress Taiyi could only rescue the Empress Nangong first. Indeed, they are worthy of being two empresses. They actually performed so perfectly without any coordination, deceiving everyone. It's a pity that the Empress Xuanguang still had the upper hand. Above the void, the Empress Xinguang snorted coldly. As long as she had the Haotian mirror in her hand, no one in the world could save Xiao Chun. As for the fact that the Empress Taiyin had just saved the Empress Nangong, she was just too lazy to waste time stopping her. In a crack in the void thousands of miles away, the Empress Taiyin, Wen Yaxian, and the Empress Nangong, Lang Ruoxua, revealed their true forms. Lang Ruoxua looked at Wen Yaxian and snorted coldly, "It seems that you're not that stupid." When everyone was immersed in the image of the Haotian mirror, she had transmitted a signal to the Empress Taiyin with her eyes. She believed that the Empress Taiyin could understand what she meant. but whether the Empress Tyene would help her depended on whether the Empress Tyene had a conscience. Fortunately, the Empress Tyene was not such a heartless and unprincipled person. It was a pity that their plan was ultimately exposed by the Empress Xianguang, and they were unable to rescue their master. The Empress Tyene could see that the Empress Nangon was jealous of her for being loved by their master, so her attitude towards her was not very good. She also looked down on the Empress Nangon, but in order to rescue their master, she had to temporarily cooperate with the Empress Nangon. Enough talk, if it weren't for our master, I wouldn't cooperate with you. Now, let's figure out how to rescue our master. The Empress Tyene, Wen Yaxian, said coldly. Fine, but before that, you have to use your Tyene power to help me restore my cultivation. Lang Ruoxue, the Empress Nangon, replied. Wen Yaxian, the Empress Tyene, naturally had no reason to refuse. If the Empress Nangon, Lang Ruoxue, had no cultivation, then rescuing her would be meaningless. Therefore, without the Empress Nangon, Lang Ruoxue having to say anything, she would help her restore her cultivation. Fortunately, through the great divine ability of reflecting the heavens, the images in the Haotian mirror could be seen everywhere in the world. During the process of Wen Yaxian, the Empress Tyene, helping Lang Ruoxue, the Empress Nangon, restore her cultivation, the two of them could also understand what had happened to Xiao Chen. In the Haotian realm, since Wen Yaxian left, that demonic consciousness unexpectedly had a change of heart and wanted to teach Xiao Chen a higher level of cultivation. But Xiao Chen knew that something was amiss, there must be a demon. Soon after, Xiao Chen quickly realized that as Wen Yaxian's cultivation improved, the control of the demonic consciousness over her also increased. Xiao Chen speculated that as long as his cultivation improved, the power of the demonic consciousness would also correspondingly increase. In the end, it might become so powerful that even his will would be difficult to resist, and he would become a complete puppet of the demonic consciousness. Thinking of this, Xiao Chen would never let the demonic consciousness succeed in its scheme. He had already thought of a foolproof way to perish together with the demonic consciousness. That was to endure with the demonic consciousness until he grew old and died. When his old body was decayed and decrepit, even if the demonic consciousness controlled his body, it would not be able to cause any trouble. The demonic consciousness obviously realized his plan. In order to force Xiao Chen to submit, the demonic consciousness began to constantly tempt him to harm innocent people. Every time the demonic consciousness tempted him to harm innocent people, Xiao Chen would fiercely stab himself to keep himself clear-headed. Before long, he was covered in scars. The demonic consciousness seemed very happy to see him in this sorry state. Therefore, it became even more excited to tempt him to harm innocent people. Because of this, Xiao Chen was worried that one day he would not be able to control himself, so he hid in a deep mountain forest and lived a peaceful life. He didn't know how much time had passed. One day, the mountain forest shook, the earth trembled, and a brilliant divine light gushed out from the mountains. Countless animals in the mountain forest were alarmed, including Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen didn't know what had happened, but the demonic consciousness inside him excitedly shouted, "Kid, this is a great opportunity. If I'm not mistaken, this is at least the legacy of a saint." Opportunity? Xiao Chen smiled faintly. What does it have to do with me? You. The demonic consciousness couldn't speak. Don't you want to become stronger? No. Xiao Chen said decisively. Don't think I don't know what you're up to. Ever since you entered my body, you've been trying to find ways to improve my cultivation. Do you think I don't know that as long as my cultivation improves, your power will also increase? The demonic consciousness felt somewhat helpless. She was a peerless genius in her lifetime, rarely encountering opponents. But she had never encountered such a shrewd and tenacious opponent like Xiao Chen. Having been with Xiao Chen for so long, she knew that he was a stubborn kid who wouldn't budge. But there was no reason to miss out on this opportunity. If she could obtain the inheritance of a saint, she might be able to greatly increase her power, completely control the body, and even restore her cultivation to the level of a saint. But it was clear that Xiao Chen wouldn't let her have her way so easily. For this, she had to come up with a plan. Kid, how about we make a deal? No. You damn well listen to me before making a decision. I won't listen, I'm not interested. Xiao Chen's attitude was firm, not giving the demonic consciousness any chance to take advantage. What do you want? The demonic consciousness was almost in tears. She had never encountered such a difficult opponent like Xiao Chen in her life. I don't want anything. Fine, I'm tired. I'll sleep first, don't bother me. After saying that, Xiao Chen fell asleep, not giving the demonic consciousness any chance to influence him. The demonic consciousness was completely frustrated. Not even a single chance was given. It seemed that there was no hope for her to be revived in this life. She could only wait for the next generation to awaken another demon body. Helplessly, the demonic consciousness had to temporarily dispel this thought. She concealed herself deep within Xiao Chen's body. Every time he became active, he would fall into weakness. The next appearance would require a long wait. Finally, Xiao Chen could have some peace for a while. At this time, the remnants of the inheritance site were filled with the sound of fighting. Obviously, the commotion here had attracted those cultivators who came to fight for the inheritance. It was at least a saint-level inheritance site, such a great opportunity. Perhaps only Xiao Chen would remain indifferent. Several days later, the divine light of the inheritance site dimmed. It seemed that the inheritance had been taken by someone. But Xiao Chen was unaware and uninterested in all of this. He lived a simple life, working at sunrise and resting at sunset. However, one evening, on his way home, he unexpectedly saw a young girl in a fiery red dress lying in front of his thatched hut. Xiao Chen went to check, and found a beautiful and spirited girl who seemed to be seriously injured. He quickly carried her into the house. Meanwhile, outside the Haotian realm, the heavenly Empress Wen Yaxian was taken aback. She stared at the red-clothed girl, recalling some scenes from the past. Back then, in her pursuit of revenge, she had inadvertently entered this inheritance site. With the help of fate, she had made it all the way to the end. The one who had made it to the end with her was this red-clothed girl. However, in the end, the inheritance had chosen her, and the red-clothed girl was shaken out of the inheritance site. After recalling all of this, Wen Yaxian finally understood why the Heavenly Fire Empress had animosity towards her. It was because this red-clothed girl was none other than the current Heavenly Fire Empress. The Heavenly Fire Empress had lost to her in the fight for the inheritance, and had been shaken out of the site, suffering a serious injury. She still held a grudge, which was understandable. Moreover, it seemed that there was some connection between the Heavenly Fire Empress and her master, Xiao Chen. In the sky above the original imperial city, the Heavenly Fire Empress looked at the image in the Haotian mirror, her expression suddenly becoming complicated. The original Heavenly Fire country was not the current powerful and influential Heavenly Fire divine dynasty. It was once an insignificant small country. She did not want to be an innocent little princess. She also had her own ambitions and aspirations. She not only wants to seize the throne, but also wants to develop the Tianhua kingdom to a level that is difficult for all dynasties to reach. Therefore, she has been seeking opportunities outside to gain experience. Finally, the heavens did not disappoint her, allowing her to come across the legacy of a sage. However, she never expected that as a princess, she would end up losing to an unknown maid. This failure deeply frustrated her and almost caused her to give up. Fortunately, she met the man who would become the most unforgettable person in her life, Xiao Chen. It was Xiao Chen who pulled her out of the abyss. However, it was also Xiao Chen who ultimately pushed her into a deep abyss. Two burning flames appeared in the eyes of the Tianhua Empress. People now believe that Xiao Chen was controlled by a demonic consciousness and became the Dark Emperor who later brought disaster to the world. But she was very clear that Xiao Chen had always been Xiao Chen and had never been under any control. Xiao Chen, you deserve to die. But you can only die by my hand. The onlookers watching the image in the Haotian mirror were stunned by the appearance of the girl in red. Both her appearance and attire were so similar to the current Tianhua Empress. Everyone was dumbfounded. Could it be that the Dark Emperor and the Tianhua Empress had a history together? People were bewildered. Could there be some hidden story again? Oh no! Two empresses have already fallen from grace, leaning towards the side of the Dark Emperor. The fans of the Nangong Empress and the Taiyin Empress were in tears. The most nervous now are probably the fans of the Tianhua Empress. It should be noted that behind the Tianhua Empress is the entire Tianhua dynasty. The Tianhua dynasty is now second only to the heavenly court in the world of cultivation. If the Tianhua Empress also leans towards the Dark Emperor, or even wants to rescue the Dark Emperor, things will be quite difficult. People were discussing fervently, and some even started to discuss what to do if even the Tianhua Empress were to lean towards the Dark Emperor. Outrageous! How dare you speak ill of the Tianhua Empress? I see you are seeking death. A powerful energy wave appeared outside the imperial city. Countless soldiers in fiery red armor revealed their true forms, forming a legion of 10,000 in the blink of an eye. Leading this legion was a burly man with eyes like torches and long hair burning like flames. With the appearance of this legion, the surrounding space quickly filled with fierce and violent aura. This is the Fire Demon Legion of the Tianhua Divine Dynasty. Someone exclaimed, revealing the origin of this group of soldiers. A legion with such power in the world of cultivation is probably only the Fire Demon Legion of the Tianhua Dynasty. It is said that the selection process for the Fire Demon Legion is extremely strict, and even the most ordinary soldier has the cultivation of the Dragon Transformation Realm. Is it true or not? Even the most ordinary soldier has the cultivation of the Dragon Transformation Realm? Someone was astonished and found it hard to believe. It should be noted that reaching the Dragon Transformation Realm means having a body like a dragon, with the ability to move mountains and seas with a single gesture. In those sects and forces, they are basically true disciples who have been carefully cultivated by the sect. But now you're telling me that even the most ordinary soldier in the Fire Demon Legion has the cultivation of the dragon transformation realm? Most people find it hard to believe. However, someone spoke up at this point. Yes, the selection process for the Fire Demon Legion is extremely strict, and the cultivation of the dragon transformation realm is just the most basic requirement. I once participated in the selection process for the Fire Demon Legion, but unfortunately, I was not chosen for other reasons. But I gained a lot during the selection process, and my cultivation has improved. I am planning to participate in the next selection for the Fire Demon Legion. Someone recognized the person who spoke up. He was a prodigy with the cultivation reaching the heavenly realm, and he had been gaining popularity in the world of cultivation in recent years. Unexpectedly, even such a prominent figure had been rejected from the Fire Demon Legion. What kind of extraordinary existence were those soldiers selected for the Fire Demon Legion? People were somewhat astonished. Although the world knows that the Tianhua Empire is only second to the Heavenly Court in the top power of the immortal cultivation world, it is obviously still underestimating the strength of the Tianhua Empire. Even the always lofty Empress Xuanwang, at this moment, looked at the appearance of the Fire Corps with a sense of dread in her eyes. Just the Fire Corps alone is no weaker than the heavenly soldiers and generals of the Heavenly Court. Moreover, the leader at the forefront still exudes the aura of an imperial-level figure. If she is not mistaken, this leader should be the younger brother of the Tianhua Empress, the Tianhua King of the Tianhua Empire, a quasi-imperial level powerhouse second only to the 7 Empresses. With the appearance of the Fire Corps and the Tianhua King, no one dared to discuss anything related to the Tianhua Empress anymore. The eyes of the Tianhua King were like fire, scanning all the cultivators around him. Wherever his gaze fell, no one dared to meet his eyes. Seeing this scene, the Tianhua King finally stopped, not bothering with the nonsense of the onlookers. He turned his gaze to Xiaochen, who was already like a living dead inside the original imperial city. The eyes of the Tianhua King were like fire, containing boundless anger. Xiaochen, I treated you like a close brother back then, but you caused the death of my father, almost leading to the destruction of the Tianhua Empire. Today, no one can save you. I want to witness your complete downfall with my own eyes. He had been overseeing the Tianhua Empire for the Tianhua Empress, observing Xiaochen's life experiences through the Haotian mirror. However, after learning of the conspiracy between the Nangong Empress and the Taiyin Empress to rescue Xiaochen, he led the Fire Corps to prevent Xiaochen from being rescued. Xiaochen must die. Looking up at the Tianhua Empress above the void, seeing the complex expression on her face, the Tianhua King felt some worry in his heart. He hoped that his royal sister would not be soft-hearted. In the void, the Tianhua Empress gazed at the image appearing in the Haotian mirror with her full attention, seemingly unaware of the arrival of the Tianhua King. The expression of the Tianhua Empress at this moment was very complex. There was anger, hatred, unwillingness, regret, and a hint of love. Back then, at the lowest point in her life, she met Xiaochen. Although Xiaochen's cultivation was not as high as hers, his indifferent and untempted heart, untouched by any worldly desires, was far beyond her reach. Xiaochen possessed a Tao heart that only a sage could have. In the end, through her daily interactions with Xiaochen, she realized the true meaning of cultivation. She emerged from the low point and began to walk a higher and purer path of cultivation. Her relationship with Xiaochen was that of both teacher and friend. Although Xiaochen's cultivation was far inferior to hers, she still respectfully called Xiaochen master. During that time, she was deeply influenced by Xiaochen's indifference to fame and fortune and his peaceful nature. Under Xiaochen's influence, her sharp edges were gradually smoothed out. At the same time, she also deeply fell in love with Xiaochen, the man who changed the trajectory of her life. After learning that Xiaochen was troubled by the demonic consciousness within him, she invited Xiaochen to return to the Tianhua Empire with her. The national treasure of the Tianhua Empire, Tianhua, was one of the most sacred treasures in the world, capable of dispelling all darkness and evil. At the same time, she also had the idea of keeping Xiaochen by her side. But she did not expect that this decision almost led to the complete destruction of the entire Tianhua Empire. More than half of the innocent people in the imperial city perished in that disaster. And the culprit of that disaster was Xiaochen. Her father, the king of the Tianhua Empire, died at the hands of Xiaochen in that disaster. All of this was witnessed by her younger brother, the current Tianhua king. Moreover, when she questioned Xiaochen in disbelief, Xiaochen admitted everything with his own mouth. Xiaochen admitted that he coveted the national treasure of the Tianhua Empire, Tianhua, and inadvertently caused this disaster. After making an insincere apology, Xiaochen, who had committed all these sins, left. There were no misunderstandings, and there were no hidden truths. Everything was due to Xiao Chen's slight deviation in thought. The Empress of the Heavenly Fire looked at Xiao Chen, who was already a living dead, with her eyes burning like torches. Xiao Chen's previous indifference to fame and fortune, and carefree attitude, were all ultimately false. After she asked her father, the Emperor, to use the power of the Heavenly Fire to remove the demonic consciousness from Xiao Chen, freed from all restraints, ultimately revealed the desires that every ordinary person would have. After the first time, it became uncontrollable. Driven by increasingly strong and insatiable desires, Xiao Chen ultimately completely fell into darkness and descended into the demonic path. She never expected that Xiao Chen would later become the Dark Emperor who brought calamity to the world. This was something she had never anticipated. Becoming a Buddha or a demon was just a matter of Xiao Chen's momentary lapse. It was she who gave Xiao Chen the opportunity to fall into the demonic path. Now, it would be her who would completely end Xiao Chen's life of sin. Gazing blankly at the Haotian mirror, the next scene that would appear would be the most ordinary, yet also the most heartwarming and unforgettable time of her life. If time could stand still, she wished she could live with Xiao Chen forever in that simple thatched cottage, free from worldly troubles. She was not the revered Empress of the Heavenly Fire, and Xiao Chen was not the Dark Emperor who brought calamity to the world. They were just two ordinary, common people who met, knew each other, and fell in love. They would grow old together and live out their ordinary lives. Xiao Chen, I love you. No one in this world loves you more than I do, murmured the Empress of the Heavenly Fire, a tear filled with deep affection rolling down her cheek. This was an emotion she had never expressed before. Perhaps to this day, Xiao Chen still did not know how deep her love was. In the past, she had wanted to express her feelings many times, but she could feel that Xiao Chen's heart was concerned about another person. Due to her status as a princess, or perhaps out of fear of rejection, she had never directly expressed her love for Xiao Chen. So she indirectly brought Xiao Chen back to the land of the Heavenly Fire, and begged her father to use the national treasure, the Heavenly Fire, to remove the demonic consciousness from Xiao Chen. She hoped that through her efforts and the accumulation of daily companionship, Xiao Chen would also fall in love with her. But her decision had brought disaster to the land of the Heavenly Fire. It led to the death of her father, the death of more than half of the innocent people in the imperial city, and almost brought about the complete destruction of the land of the Heavenly Fire. Now, she knew that the person Xiao Chen had been concerned about was the current Empress, Wenyaxian. Do you see? The person you were concerned about has abandoned you. The Empress of the Heavenly Fire sneered at the living dead Xiao Chen in the original imperial city. Perhaps it was more of a venting of her long-standing grievances. Soon, very soon, I will end your life of sin. Whether it was all of Xiao Chen's sins or the love she still held for Xiao Chen from the beginning to now, it would be her who would bring everything to a complete end. In the Haotian realm, Xiao Chen carefully took care of the girl in red. The girl in red mainly suffered from internal injuries, and it would probably take a long time for her to recover. Looking at the unconscious girl in red, Xiao Chen frowned slightly, feeling somewhat troubled. The girl in red had been unconscious for 2 days, and if she did not eat soon, she might be able to hold on for another 2 days. But if she did not drink water soon, she might not be able to hold on. The girl in red was completely unconscious at this time, and when water was poured into her mouth, it could not enter her throat. After hesitating and struggling, Xiao Chen held the water in her mouth and then used a bamboo tube to send it into the girl in red's throat. After carefully taking care of her for 2 or 3 days, the girl in red finally regained some consciousness and could drink water on her own. 7 days later, the girl in red finally slowly opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was a handsome and refined face. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and said, "How are you feeling? Are you hungry?" Yes, the girl in red nodded slightly, showing no signs of unfamiliarity. Although she didn't know who the handsome man in front of her was, she could feel that someone had been taking care of her these past few days. Obviously, this person was the handsome man in front of her. In these days, although she gradually regained some consciousness, her body was still too weak and she couldn't fully wake up. Therefore, in her mind, she had fantasized countless times about who this person was who had saved her and taken care of her so carefully. She had imagined his appearance and his identity. Now she could finally see him. His appearance was even better than she had imagined. As for his identity, judging from the surroundings, he should be an ordinary mortal. Soon, Xiao Chen came to the front of the girl in red with a bowl of vegetable porridge. Looking at the plain vegetable porridge in front of her, the girl in red frowned slightly, wrinkled her nose, and looked very disdainful. As a princess, she had never eaten such a simple and plain vegetable porridge before. She could even count the number of vegetable leaves. Xiao Chen looked at the girl in red with a look of disdain on her face and said lightly, "There's only these things at home. If you don't eat, you'll have to go hungry." "I won't eat it, who cares?" The girl in red snorted coldly and turned her head away. As she was the most beloved princess of the Tianhua kingdom, she had never experienced such humiliation. Fine. Since the other party didn't appreciate it, Xiao Chen didn't insist. After speaking, Xiao Chen stood up and was about to take the vegetable porridge away. Gurgle, the girl in red's stomach made an awkward sound. Xiao Chen couldn't help but stop in his tracks, a slight curve appearing at the corner of his mouth. It seemed that the girl in red's body was more honest than her mouth. The girl in red's face immediately flushed with embarrassment, looking somewhat awkward. The girl in red stared at her belly, cursing herself inwardly. "You're really disappointing. It's so embarrassing." Xiao Chen turned to look at her and smiled gently. "Still want to eat?" "Yes." The girl in red restrained her temper and nodded gently. A grown woman could bend and stretch, and in the future, she would lead the Tianhua kingdom to prosperity as the Empress of Tianhua. What was this setback? However, as she was about to sit up and reach for the bowl in the other's hand, she was horrified to find that she couldn't even muster the strength to sit up, let alone circulate her true energy. Her injuries were far more severe than she had estimated. Thinking back to her defeat by an unknown girl in the inheritance ruins, her self-esteem and confidence had been severely shaken. Xiao Chen noticed the girl in red's physical condition, first putting the bowl of vegetable porridge aside, then walking over to help the girl in red sit against the wall, comforting her softly. "Your body is still too weak now. You need to rest for a few more days before you can move on your own." The girl in red remained silent, looking somewhat despondent, as if she couldn't bear such a blow. Xiao Chen picked up the vegetable porridge and sat in front of the bed, scooping up a spoonful and offering it to the girl in red's mouth. "Your body won't recover if you don't eat." The girl in red didn't speak, but a crystal tear silently fell on Xiao Chen's finger. Feeling the dampness on his fingertip, Xiao Chen paused. The girl in red's tears gradually wet her eyes, and the tears then fell like raindrops. Obviously, her inner wounds were heavier than her physical ones. Xiao Chen could see that the girl in red was a very proud person. She must have suffered a great setback this time, feeling a great sense of defeat in her heart, and may have even lost her confidence. Originally, Xiao Chen was going to let the girl in red be alone for a while. However, seeing her completely breaking down at this moment, if not guided, she might just sink and never recover. Although he and the girl in red were not related, since he had encountered her, he couldn't just stand by and do nothing. Xiao Chen put down the vegetable porridge and took out a coarse cloth handkerchief, preparing to wipe away the tears from the face of the girl in red. The girl in red roared, "Get lost! I, Huolinger, don't need sympathy from a mere mortal like you." Xiao Chen's expression remained unchanged at her words, but his actions became rough. Like a mother, he grabbed the back of the girl's head and used the handkerchief to wipe away the tears on her face with force. "You still have the temper. Looks like there's still hope." Xiao Chen smirked, increasing the strength of his hand, distorting the face of the girl named Huolinger. You. Huolinger was furious, never having suffered such humiliation as the most beloved princess of the Tianhua kingdom. "Tell me your name. I will definitely reward you later." Although she said reward, Huolinger's eyes at that moment were fierce, more like a threat. Xiao Chen paid no attention, casually saying, "Xiao Chen." It seemed that the girl named Huolinger had completely ignored her previous sense of defeat and focused all her energy on hating him. She was truly a naive and easily fooled girl. Ignoring Huolinger's fierce expression, Xiao Chen picked up the vegetable porridge and said to Huolinger with a smile, "This vegetable porridge will get cold if you don't eat it soon." "Humph. I won't eat your food," Huolinger said arrogantly, turning her head away. Gurgle. Huolinger's stomach made an embarrassing sound again. Her face, already reddened by Xiao Chen's actions, became even more vibrant. She was truly disappointing. Glancing at the bland vegetable porridge in Xiao Chen's hand, Huolinger found herself unconsciously swallowing her saliva. Huolinger was infuriated. As the most beloved princess of the Tianhua kingdom, she had tasted all kinds of delicacies. Yet now, she was tempted by a bowl of bland vegetable porridge. It was truly a failure. No, she must endure and not lose face. But Gurgle. Xiao Chen could see Huolinger's struggle. It seemed he needed to put in more effort. Xiao Chen picked up the vegetable porridge and sighed softly. "Well, since you won't eat it, I can't let it go to waste. I'll just eat it myself." With that, Xiao Chen scooped up a spoonful and savored it slowly. Tisk, my cooking skills are truly exceptional. It's smooth and fragrant, leaving a lingering taste. A simple bowl of vegetable porridge was turned into a delicious dish by Xiao Chen. Huolinger pursed her lips, glaring at Xiao Chen with resentment. Xiao Chen was definitely doing this on purpose, making a fuss over a plain bowl of vegetable porridge. However, as she watched the vegetable leaves on Xiao Chen's lips, Huolinger couldn't help but swallow her saliva. It wasn't that she was greedy, but she was just too hungry. Gurgle. But her inner pride wouldn't allow her to yield to Xiao Chen first. So, she could only watch as Xiao Chen finished the entire bowl of vegetable porridge. Tears glistened in Huolinger's eyes. At that moment, she felt extremely wronged. When had she ever been bullied like this? Seeing the dejected Huolinger, Xiao Chen realized he might have gone too far. In fact, there was still porridge in the pot, and he had just wanted to tease this arrogant girl when he noticed the porridge in her bowl had cooled. He didn't expect things to escalate. Xiao Chen filled another bowl of vegetable porridge and returned to Huolinger, saying softly, "The porridge is still hot. Have some." Seeing the refilled bowl in front of her, Huolinger suddenly understood that Xiao Chen had been teasing her on purpose. For a moment, Huolinger was both angry and resentful, but ultimately, amidst the stubborn gurgle sound, she cried in frustration, "Woo woo, you bullied me." Huolinger looked at Xiao Chen with teary eyes, but her gaze was filled with stubbornness. "Even if I starve, I won't eat your food." Xiao Chen sighed helplessly. She was truly an unyielding and arrogant girl. Unfortunately, Xiao Chen could only apologize. "I'm sorry, it's all my fault. Can you please do me the honor of tasting the porridge I made?" "Humph, that's more like it." Huolinger laughed through her tears, a mischievous glint in her eyes. Then, she couldn't wait any longer and opened her mouth wide. Xiao Chen was taken aback. How did it feel like he was being played? But since the words were already spoken, there was no way to take them back. He could only obediently feed the scheming and proud Huolinger the porridge. As soon as a spoonful of vegetable porridge entered her mouth, Huolinger's eyes instantly lit up. The extravagant adjectives Xiao Chen had used before were actually not exaggerated. The porridge was smooth, fragrant, and left a lingering taste on the lips and teeth. After the first bite, she couldn't wait to have a second. A bowl of ordinary vegetable porridge far surpassed all the delicacies she had ever eaten. Unconsciously, Huolinger even finished 3 large bowls, scraping the bottom of the pot clean. Seeing Huolinger contentedly satisfied, Xiao Chen couldn't help but smile. After finishing all the vegetable porridge in the pot, Huolinger still seemed unsatisfied. But seeing Xiao Chen's smiling face, she immediately put on an act. "The porridge has been left in the pot for too long. It has a burnt taste, a failure. The vegetables are overcooked and turned yellow, a failure. The most ridiculous thing is this." Xiao Chen looked at Huolinger with a strange expression. For her to pick out so many flaws in a bowl of ordinary vegetable porridge, she was truly talented. Looking at the increasingly excited Huolinger, Xiao Chen turned over the empty bowl in his hand and casually said, "This bowl is so clean, it looks like it doesn't need to be washed." Hearing this, Huolinger blushed again. She couldn't help but feel a little guilty. She had belittled the vegetable porridge Xiao Chen made, yet she had eaten it so cleanly. Wasn't she just humiliating herself? Ahem. Feeling slightly embarrassed, Huolinger suddenly put on a serious expression and looked at Xiao Chen, saying in a deep voice, "For saving my life, once I recover, I will definitely reward you generously." "Princess?" Xiao Chen looked Huolinger up and down. Indeed, she had a bit of a princess complex. "No need for a reward, just don't linger around after you recover." Looking at the clean bowl in his hand, Xiao Chen said solemnly, "I can't afford your appetite." Huolinger glared at Xiao Chen in embarrassment. It was the first time in her life that someone had complained about her eating too much. It was a great humiliation. She was a princess. Couldn't Xiao Chen understand the point of her words? She thought that after revealing her identity, even if Xiao Chen didn't fawn over her or try to please her, he should at least treat her with caution and respect. But she didn't expect Xiao Chen to not only show no surprise or fear, but also to complain about her eating too much and being afraid of overstaying. She had never suffered such injustice in her life. Huolinger was annoyed. "Who wants to stay in your shabby thatched hut? When I recover, I won't stay even if you beg me." "That's for the best," Xiao Chen said with a faint smile. In fact, he didn't really mind Huolinger eating a lot. He just didn't know why, but he felt like teasing this proud girl. After speaking, Xiao Chen took the empty bowl to the kitchen to clean up. Huolinger stared at Xiao Chen's departing figure, stuck out her tongue, and made a face. This guy was really annoying. However, the vegetable porridge he made was really delicious. "Why does it smell so bad?" Huolinger suddenly wrinkled her nose. Because she was so hungry before, she hadn't noticed the sour smell in the air. It didn't make sense. Although Xiao Chen's clothes were relatively simple, they still looked clean. Although Xiao Chen was unpleasant, he shouldn't be that sloppy. The room, although simple, was still very neat and clean. How could there be a sour smell? After searching for a while, Huolinger finally realized where the sour smell was coming from. "Ah!" Huolinger let out a scream. The sour stench was actually emanating from her body. My God! How dirty is she now, that it's already smelling? Huolinger found it difficult to accept this fact. Come on, she's a princess. Where can she put her face with this stinky appearance? At this moment, she really felt like dying. Xiao Chen quickly walked into the room upon hearing the sound. Seeing this, Huolinger quickly restrained her expression to avoid Xiao Chen noticing anything unusual. What's wrong? Why did you suddenly scream? Xiao Chen asked. Nothing, I just saw a little mouse just now, Huo Linger forced a smile, but it looked unnatural. A mouse? Xiao Chen raised an eyebrow. If nothing unexpected happened, Huo Linger's cultivation should be higher than his, yet she's afraid of a mouse? Xiao Chen clearly didn't believe it. He walked up and stared at Huo Linger with his deep eyes. I'm really fine. Huo Linger was very nervous at this moment. Xiao Chen was so close now, afraid that he would also smell the sour stench on her. Xiao Chen naturally didn't believe Huo Linger's words, looking at her unnatural expression. He could feel the tension on Huo Linger's body. With the sour stench lingering in his nose, Xiao Chen quickly realized what Huo Linger was nervous about. Xiao Chen found it somewhat amusing. Huo Linger had been lying on the bed for so long, it was normal for her to have a smell. But seeing how nervous she was, it was obviously something she found difficult to talk about. Perhaps this was the modesty of a girl. However, dealing with this matter was really troublesome. Huo Linger's current situation was almost no different from being completely paralyzed. There was simply no way for her to clean herself and change clothes. But they were not close enough for him to do these things, right? Xiao Chen fell into thought for a moment. Huo Linger kept her heart hanging as Xiao Chen remained silent. She didn't know if Xiao Chen had noticed the stench on her. After thinking it over, Xiao Chen slowly spoke, You've been unconscious for several days, but we're not that close, so I haven't helped you change clothes or clean your body. I don't know what you're thinking, but if you need it, I can help you with these things. Xiao Chen's expression was indifferent, as if he was talking about something very ordinary. After hearing Xiao Chen's words, Huo Linger felt embarrassed. Sure enough, Xiao Chen had noticed the sour stench on her, and he even planned to help her clean her body and change clothes personally. Although she cursed Xiao Chen in her heart for being delusional, wanting something beyond his reach, she also hesitated a bit. With her current physical condition, it would probably take a lot of time to fully recover. Should she just let her body continue to stink? If it continued for a few more days, her body would probably start to smell. Huo Linger was now in a dilemma. Xiao Chen sat quietly without disturbing Huo Linger. He was open-minded and straightforward. If Huo Linger needed it, he could help. If she didn't, he wouldn't mind her smelling for a few more days. Everything depended on Huo Linger's attitude. After much deliberation, Huo Linger finally made her choice. Although it was difficult to ask a man she had just met to help her change clothes and clean her body, she couldn't bear the sour stench on her body. She couldn't accept it psychologically or physically. And although Xiao Chen was very annoying, he had saved her and taken care of her these days. This clearly showed that Xiao Chen was a gentleman, with no intention of taking advantage of her. After all, if Xiao Chen really had ulterior motives, he would have had plenty of opportunities, without going through so much trouble. Then I'll trouble you. Huo Linger's voice was as small as a mosquito. It was embarrassing to say it out loud. Okay. Xiao Chen's face showed no expression, just a slight nod. I'll go heat up some water. About a quarter of an hour later, Xiao Chen walked into the room carrying a bucket of hot water. Although she had agreed to it herself, at this moment, Huo Linger's face was still red and hot. Why is your face so red? Are you feeling unwell? Xiao Chen didn't know what had come over him. He knew that Huo Linger's blushing was due to shyness, but he couldn't help but tease this proud girl. Perhaps it was because he had always lived in this deep mountain forest, isolated from the world. Suddenly encountering this proud girl finally added some fun to his life. Huo Linger was stunned for a moment, then realized that she must have written the word nervous directly on her face. This wouldn't do. She couldn't lose face in front of Xiao Chen. She immediately explained seriously, I practice fire attribute techniques, so I blush more easily. By the way, do you know what a cultivator is? You live alone in this deep mountain forest, so you must not be an ordinary mortal, right? I've been cultivating for a few years and have barely reached the qi refining stage. Xiao Chen had nothing to hide. Qi refining stage? Ha ha. Huo Linger suddenly laughed. It seems that your talent is pretty lousy. I reached the foundation building stage when I was 8. Finally, she found an opportunity to mock Xiao Chen. Huo Linger looked very pleased at this moment. Xiao Chen seemed to have no reaction, but unconsciously clenched his teeth. Enough nonsense, I'm going to start undressing. Go ahead, why are you being so loud? Huo Linger glared at Xiao Chen defiantly. Then, the next second, after realizing what she had said, her face turned red. Watching Huo Linger look embarrassed, Xiao Chen felt somewhat pleased for some reason. He didn't know why, but arguing with Huo Linger made him feel amused. Perhaps his secluded life in the mountains was just too boring and lonely. Suddenly encountering this proud girl, Huo Linger brought out his playful side that had been dormant for many years. Xiao Chen walked slowly to Huo Linger with the hot water and teased, Are you going to wash up or not? The water will cool down if you don't. I will. Huo Linger glared at Xiao Chen fiercely. she had to yield under the eaves. After she recovered, she would see how to deal with Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen didn't care about Huo Linger's angry gaze and sat directly in front of the bed, as if he was about to reach out and take off Huo Linger's clothes. Wait! Huo Linger stopped Xiao Chen's actions. What's wrong? Xiao Chen looked at her. What's wrong? Huo Linger was furious. Are you just going to undress me like that? You clearly want to take advantage of me. If I don't undress you like this, how else should I do it? Xiao Chen looked at Huo Linger with a smile, pretending to be puzzled. In fact, he had already figured out what to do. Of course, he couldn't just blatantly take off Huo Linger's clothes. He just wanted to tease Huo Linger and see how she would react when she was angry. The angrier Huo Linger got, the more amusing he found it. Seeing Xiao Chen's smiling and insincere appearance, Huo Linger could clearly see that he was pretending to be foolish and was deliberately teasing her. She was about to explode. As the most beloved princess of the Tianhua kingdom, she had never been so angry in her life. But now, living under someone else's roof, she had to show some weakness. However, she had secretly noted all the grievances she had suffered, and when he recovered, she would make Xiao Chen pay. For now, she could only show some weakness. Could you cover me with the blanket first, and then reach in to take off my clothes? Huo Linger's voice was somewhat hesitant. Although she was a free-spirited person, as a young woman, she felt a little embarrassed to ask a man she had just met to undress her. Sure, Xiao Chen replied indifferently. In fact, the method that Huo Linger mentioned was the same as what he had in mind. After speaking, Xiao Chen reached out and covered Huo Linger with the blanket. Then he reached into the blanket to fumble for Huo Linger's belt. After a while, Huo Linger's face turned redder and hotter, and finally couldn't help but shout, "Not there, the belt is below." Sorry. I don't have much experience for the first time, Xiao Chen spoke the truth. He really didn't mean it. Soon, with Huo Linger's guidance, Xiao Chen successfully untied Huo Linger's belt. Then, one by one, he removed Huo Linger's clothes, including the extremely private undergarments. Huo Linger's face was now red and hot. She turned away and dared not look into Xiao Chen's eyes. Seeing this, Xiao Chen jokingly said, "Is there something wrong with your fire attribute cultivation technique? Why is your face as red as a monkey's butt? You're the monkey butt." Huo Linger was so angry that her eyes were almost spewing fire. She was really frustrated. She really wanted to strangle Xiao Chen. In response, Xiao Chen not only didn't get angry, but also looked quite cheerful. While tidying up the clothes that Huo Linger had just taken off, he said disdainfully, "You really should take a bath. Your clothes are all stinky." Stinky? It's really too stinky. Even through the Haotian mirror, you can smell this sour smell of love. Someone couldn't help but joke. Anyone could see that Xiao Chen's current state was completely different from his previous serious demeanor. He was completely immersed in the banter with Huo Linger, cunning and childish. A man only shows his childish side when he likes a woman. This kind of liking is obviously different from his previous liking for Wen Yaxian. For Wen Yaxian, Xiao Chen felt more responsibility and moved. But for Huo Linger, it was a genuine feeling of happiness. Xiao Chen and Huo Linger's way of getting along was completely like a pair of bickering lovers. If they don't become Dao companions in the future, it's probably going to be difficult to end well. I didn't expect that the Dark Emperor, when encountering someone he likes, is just like an ordinary man. Exactly. With this kind of childish appearance, if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, who would believe that this is the renowned Dark Emperor? Don't say that. It's actually quite sweet. It's got me all excited. No way. You two are really together? This is the Dark Emperor we're talking about. If it weren't for the Dark Emperor, I wouldn't be excited. I didn't expect that there would be such a sweet past between the Dark Emperor and the Fire Empress. It's really irresistible to watch. Exactly, if it were an ordinary mortal, what's the point of watching? The practitioners around them were speechless when they heard this kind of conversation. Anyone can fall in love, but fortunately, most people are still rational. After the lessons of the Empress Nangong and the Empress Taiyin, everyone looked very worriedly at the Empress Tianhua in the void. It doesn't matter if they are rational or not. What matters is that the Empress Tianhua must remain rational. If even the Empress Tianhua leans towards the Dark Emperor, then things will be troublesome. When the Emperor Tianhua heard the voices of those people discussing, his eyes widened, and two fiery eyebrows stood up like flames. A powerful heat pressure erupted from his body, distorting the surrounding space. Who dares to speak nonsense again? I will burn him to ashes. The Emperor Tianhua's body was burning hot, but his face was as cold as ice. And the fire demon soldiers behind him, with stern faces, exuded an overwhelming killing intent. In an instant, the surroundings became extremely quiet. The practitioners who had been chatting happily before were trembling and dared not speak again. The Emperor Tianhua looked up at the Empress Tianhua in the void, with a worried look on his face. In fact, He was also a little worried that the Empress Tianhua would have feelings for Xiao Chen and be soft-hearted, but it was clear that his worry was unnecessary. The one who can become an emperor must have an extremely firm heart. Looking at the image appearing in the Haotian mirror, although the Empress Tianhua, Huolinger, showed a nostalgic expression, her eyes became more and more determined. There was no trace of attachment or hesitation. How sweet it used to be, and how painful it became. Looking again at Xiao Chen, who was already like a living dead in the original imperial city, Empress Tianhua, Huolinger, also became more and more indifferent. Xiao Chen, rest assured, I will not let you die at the hands of others. I will personally put an end to everything between us. Since the beginning, Empress Xuanguang had been observing the changes in Empress Tianhua's emotions. Seeing Empress Tianhua becoming more and more indifferent, she withdrew her gaze. Although she feared no one as long as she had the Haotian mirror in her hand, it was still quite tricky if even Empress Tianhua suddenly turned against her. Thousands of miles away, Empress Wenyaxian, who was helping Empress Nangong, Lang Ruoxue, to restore her cultivation, looked at the image appearing in the Haotian mirror just now. Her eyes lowered, and she looked melancholic. She felt a mixture of emotions in her heart. The smile that Xiao Chen had shown on his face today far exceeded the time he had spent with her. She could tell that Xiao Chen was genuinely happy when he was with Huolinger, and this was something she couldn't give Xiao Chen. She had no jealousy in her heart, nor was she angry with Xiao Chen. She just felt a little lonely and sad. How she wished she could also bring so much happiness to Xiao Chen. As for Empress Nangong, Lang Ruoxue, her emotions were quite different at this time. She was almost grinding her teeth to pieces. Jealousy had completely distorted her appearance. Huolinger actually let her master personally help her change clothes and wipe her body. She looked like a shameless and flirtatious woman. She and Huolinger were like fire and ice, destined to be natural enemies. Once her cultivation was restored, she would make sure that Huolinger, this shameless and flirtatious woman, would look good. Returning to the image appearing in the Haotian mirror, after Xiao Chen had taken off Huolinger's clothes, he began to wipe her body with a wrung-out hot towel while holding a blanket. When he started wiping her limbs, Huolinger could still face it calmly. But when Xiao Chen was about to start wiping her torso, her heart was already pounding nervously. It was one thing to wipe her limbs, but if Xiao Chen touched the most private part of a girl, she would truly be embarrassed. Just as she was about to ask Xiao Chen to stop, she saw Xiao Chen suddenly stop and look at her with a strange expression. Huolinger was puzzled, but soon she understood what Xiao Chen meant. She saw Xiao Chen sniff his own hand and said with a disgusted look, "It stinks." Then Xiao Chen took out a wooden board from somewhere and tied the wrung-out hot towel to it. He said smugly, "Now it's done." Huolinger was embarrassed. Although Xiao Chen's current method was more in line with her preferences, seeing Xiao Chen's undisguised disgust made her feel even more ashamed. "Couldn't you be a little more tactful in your words?" She found that Xiao Chen was particularly deliberate in provoking her anger. It hadn't even been a day, and Xiao Chen had already angered her several times. No, she had to quickly restore her body, otherwise she would be driven to death by Xiao Chen sooner or later. And now, Xiao Chen had done something to anger her again. She saw Xiao Chen reaching into the blanket with the wooden board tied with a hot towel and began to wipe her body. No, it shouldn't be called wiping, it should be called scrubbing. Xiao Chen's movements were extremely rough. It didn't seem like he was wiping someone's body, but more like scraping fish scales. And it was a smelly salted fish. Huolinger felt quite despondent. She had previously worried that Xiao Chen would covet her beauty and take advantage of her. This idea was completely unnecessary. She could tell that Xiao Chen never really saw her as a woman. He didn't understand how to treat a woman delicately. It was only because she was a practitioner herself, with a stronger physical body. If it were a normal girl in her place, being rubbed so hard by Xiao Chen, even if she didn't die, she would definitely lose some skin. After struggling to clean Huolinger, Xiao Chen stared at the bucket of dirty water and said, "TSK TSK. It's so dirty." Huolinger didn't say anything, just rolled her eyes at Xiao Chen. She had only been unconscious for a little over 10 days, how could she be as dirty as Xiao Chen described? Huolinger glanced into the bucket. Okay. There was indeed a layer of grime floating on the water surface, but that was not because she was usually untidy, but because she had been made dirty by the mechanisms in the previous heritage site she had explored. Thinking of the failed heritage site competition, Huolinger's expression suddenly became somewhat despondent. She had always been proud and pampered since childhood, adored by everyone. She never expected to end up being inferior to an unknown wild girl. She fell deep into self-doubt. Xiao Chen felt a little helpless. He had let his guard down for a moment. Huolinger started blaming herself again. "Hey!" Xiao Chen patted Huolinger's shoulder. "What?" Huolinger impatiently glared at Xiao Chen. "Are you planning to keep not wearing clothes?" Xiao Chen glanced at Huolinger's shoulder. He saw that the blanket covering her had already started to slip down, revealing a large area of fair skin underneath. "Ah! You pervert, close your eyes, don't look." Huo Linger scolded Xiao Chen loudly. "Ha!" Xiao Chen's face showed a disdainful expression. He didn't say anything, but it seemed like he did. Huo Linger suddenly felt embarrassed and furious. She had never suffered such humiliation before. When she recovered, she wouldn't care about the reputation of repaying kindness with enmity. She would definitely blind Xiao Chen's eyes and tear his mouth apart. "Are you thinking about how to repay kindness with enmity?" Xiao Chen suddenly squinted, staring at her intently. Huo Linger's body stiffened. "No way? Was my expression so obvious?" "Yes, your expression is so obvious, saying that you want to retaliate against me," Xiao Chen said lightly. Seeing Xiao Chen once again uncovering her thoughts, Huo Linger was completely at a loss. Looking at the dazed Huo Linger, Xiao Chen couldn't help but show a pleased smile. What a naive and innocent little girl. Xiao Chen took out a clean set of clothes from the cabinet in the room, walked to Huo Linger, and said, "I don't have any clothes for girls here, so just make do with mine for now." After that, Xiao Chen put the clothes on Huo Linger over the blanket. Huo Linger was stunned for a moment and said blankly, "You already knew that I wanted to repay kindness with enmity. Why are you still being so kind to me?" Hearing this, Xiao Chen's face showed a hearty smile. "Whether you want to repay kindness with enmity is your business. What I want to do is my business. You can't decide what I want to do." After saying that, Xiao Chen took the smelly clothes that Huo Linger had changed out of and walked out of the room, leaving behind a confident and carefree figure. Huo Linger stared blankly at Xiao Chen's back. This person was so ordinary, yet so different. Unknowingly, Huo Linger felt her heart beating fast. However, as she continued to watch, Huo Linger suddenly widened her eyes. She saw Xiao Chen outside, washing the clothes she had changed out of. During the 10 years he spent with Lang Ruoxue, he not only had to teach her cultivation, but also take care of her daily life. So he had long been accustomed to washing women's clothes and didn't feel any shame or taboo about it. After washing all the clothes, including the undergarments, he deliberately raised his hands high and spread them out under the sun to inspect. After seeing all the clothes clean and bright, she was satisfied and hung them on the hanger. This seemed like a normal action to him. It was just to check if the clothes were clean. But in Huo Linger's eyes, Xiao Chen seemed to be admiring her personal clothes in a dirty way, with a look of enjoyment on his face. "Disgusting! Shameless scoundrel!" Huo Linger blushed and cursed under her breath. But it was strange that she didn't feel very angry at the moment. She just felt a little ashamed. After all, a girl's personal clothes were being displayed so openly in front of a man, and any normal woman would feel ashamed. She felt even more unable to understand what kind of person Xiao Chen really was. Did Xiao Chen have no shame? Could he really wash a girl's personal clothes so openly? Did that mean Xiao Chen didn't see her as a girl? For a moment, Huo Linger didn't know whether to feel ashamed or grateful. After all, everything Xiao Chen did was well-intentioned and he had done nothing wrong. If she made a fuss about it, she would only seem petty and narrow-minded, lacking the openness and tolerance of people from the martial arts world. Well, since Xiao Chen didn't mind, she didn't have to mind either. Huo Linger leaned against the wall and watched Xiao Chen busy himself throughout the day. After all, apart from this, with her current physical condition, it seemed that there were no other leisure activities to pass the time. After finishing the household chores, Xiao Chen glanced at Huo Linger. After a moment of thought, he picked up the firewood knife and left the house. "Hey!" Huo Linger instinctively wanted to call out to Xiao Chen, asking where he was going and when he would be back. But before she could speak, she held back. She didn't want Xiao Chen to think that she was very dependent on him, or that she was afraid to be alone at home. That would be too humiliating. But when she saw Xiao Chen really leave, she suddenly felt empty inside. With her current serious injuries and limited mobility, anyone could bully her. For the first time, she realized that she could also feel lonely and afraid. Although she disliked Xiao Chen and he always made her angry, just seeing him made her feel inexplicably relieved and secure. As she waited for Xiao Chen to return, Huo Linger's heart became increasingly uneasy, until the string of strength in her heart finally broke, and she cried in grievance. When Xiao Chen returned and saw Huo Linger in tears, he was suddenly at a loss. Why was she crying? Thinking of this, Xiao Chen put down what he was holding and walked over to her gently, asking, "What's wrong? Are you hungry? Do you really think I'm just a food container?" Huo Linger glared at Xiao Chen, her eyes red with anger. In Xiao Chen's eyes, what did he really think of her? Xiao Chen was speechless. He didn't know when he had offended Huo Linger again. This Huo Linger was indeed fiery, living up to her name. He didn't have the patience to coax her. "If you're shouting so loudly, then there shouldn't be anything wrong." With that, Xiao Chen prepared to go about his own business. Seeing Xiao Chen turn around, Huo Linger thought he was going to leave again, and her heart suddenly panicked. She hurriedly called out, "Where are you going again?" Xiao Chen turned back to look at Huo Linger, raising an eyebrow. It seemed like he understood why Huo Linger had cried just now. "Are you afraid of me leaving?" Xiao Chen looked at Huo Linger with a smile. I'm not. This princess has been waited on since childhood, I'm just not used to not having someone around. Huo Linger explained in a panic. Although Xiao Chen knew she wasn't telling the truth, she was just being stubborn and unwilling to admit it. But this statement was really hurtful. In order to punish Huo Linger's stubbornness and make her realize her problem, Xiao Chen's face suddenly darkened and he said coldly, "I am not your servant." Having said that, Xiao Chen decisively walked out of the room and closed the door behind him. "No, that's not what I meant," Huo Linger hurriedly explained. But unfortunately, the door was closed, and Xiao Chen could no longer hear, or perhaps did not want to hear. "I really didn't mean that." Huo Linger felt very wronged, and her eyes instantly became moist. She was now very afraid that Xiao Chen would misunderstand her. However, when she heard the sounds of knocking and banging outside, she couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. At least, Xiao Chen hadn't left. After about an hour, there was no more sound outside. Creak, the door opened. Xiao Chen walked in. Huo Linger thought Xiao Chen must still be angry and was about to apologize. But she found Xiao Chen walking towards her with a blank expression. Before she could react, Xiao Chen lifted her up horizontally and walked outside. At that moment, Huo Linger was completely flustered. She thought Xiao Chen wouldn't be so angry as to throw her out, right? Huo Linger closed her eyes slowly. It was true that she had said something too harsh earlier, so it was only natural for Xiao Chen to be so angry. And then the next second, instead of being thrown out harshly, she was gently seated in a chair. Huo Linger suddenly opened her eyes and looked down at herself. She was now sitting in a handmade wheelchair. Thinking of the knocking sound she had just heard, Huo Linger immediately realized that this wheelchair must have been made by Xiao Chen just now. Looking at the floor covered with wood shavings and debris, it was obvious that Xiao Chen had gone to chop wood before. For a moment, Huo Linger's heart was filled with mixed emotions, and she couldn't express her gratitude. She was lucky she hadn't spoken out, or she would have been utterly embarrassed now. Seeing Huo Linger, who had been silent all along, Xiao Chen thought the wheelchair might not fit well and be uncomfortable to sit in. "Why aren't you speaking? Is it uncomfortable to sit in?" "No, it's very comfortable," Huo Linger hurriedly said. She wasn't just flattering, she really felt comfortable. Although the wheelchair was simple in design, it was very smooth, and all the rough edges had been polished. The bottom and back of the wheelchair were fitted with cushions, so it wouldn't be uncomfortable no matter how long she sat in it. It was obvious that Xiao Chen had put a lot of thought into this wheelchair. Seeing that Huo Linger was very satisfied with the wheelchair, a smile unconsciously appeared on Xiao Chen's lips. Earlier, when he saw Huo Linger leaning against the wall, he could only watch her pass the time. He thought that if Huo Linger stayed in the house all the time, she would feel oppressed and start to have wild thoughts, which would be very detrimental to her psychological and physical recovery. So he had the idea of making a wheelchair for her. Sitting in the wheelchair, Huo Linger didn't know what to say for a while. She quickly realized what Xiao Chen's purpose was in making this wheelchair. It would be false to say she wasn't moved. Soon, her eyes became moist again. Since meeting Xiao Chen in just one day, the number of times she had been angry and cried far exceeded all the times before. Seeing Huo Linger about to cry again, Xiao Chen felt helpless. Then he jokingly said, "I didn't expect you to be such a crybaby." Sure enough, Huo Linger immediately changed from tears to anger and said, "You're the crybaby." But soon, Huo Linger's anger subsided, and she sincerely said to Xiao Chen, "I'm sorry, I really didn't mean to look down on you, I know, I'm not angry either." Xiao Chen interrupted Huo Linger's words calmly. Huo Linger was stunned at his words, and then she saw Xiao Chen's calm expression and gentle tone, which didn't seem like a lie. She suddenly realized that she had been played by Xiao Chen again. Originally, Huo Linger wanted to get angry, but when she met Xiao Chen's eyes with a hint of a smile, she swallowed her anger and realized that she couldn't outsmart Xiao Chen. She asked him why he was so good to her, and he joked that he was afraid she would haunt him as a ghost. She was annoyed but agreed to go fishing with him. At the river, she cheered as he fished, but her excitement scared the fish away. Xiao Chen realized she was intentionally causing trouble, but he remained patient. Finally, Xiao Chen was defeated once. "I'm done fishing." Xiao Chen suddenly stood up and angrily threw the fishing rod aside. "Done fishing?" Huo Linger was somewhat surprised. Xiao Chen had no reason to surrender so quickly. She then asked, "If we can't catch any fish, what are we going to eat tonight?" Sigh. Xiao Chen sighed, then took out a lot of earthworms wrapped in lotus leaves for fishing. "Luckily, there are plenty of earthworms dug up. I'll go find some bamboo worms later, and we should be able to manage a meal." "What?" Huo Linger's pupils trembled, finding it hard to believe what she had just heard. Are you sure we can eat these things? Huo Linger resisted. They are very nutritious. Are you sure you don't want to try? Xiao Chen approached Huo Linger with the earthworms in hand. Seeing Xiao Chen's mischievous smile, Huo Linger realized that he was deliberately trying to scare her. Despite knowing this, she couldn't help but shiver at the sight of the wriggling creatures getting closer to her. She would rather face ferocious beasts than deal with these seemingly harmless yet disgustingly squirming things. In the end, she had to compromise. After all, she didn't know if Xiao Chen would actually force these things into her mouth. She didn't believe Xiao Chen would show any mercy. Yielding to Xiao Chen's coercion, Huo Linger could only watch as Xiao Chen continued fishing. Splash! Ripples appeared on the water's surface. Ah, quick! Huo Linger instinctively wanted to shout, but she managed to stop herself in time. Xiao Chen glanced at Huo Linger, seeing her excited and nervous expression, and couldn't help but smile. It's hooked! Xiao Chen suddenly stood up, pulled the fishing rod, and a fish weighing about 2 pounds leaped out of the water. Thud, thud, thud. Xiao Chen threw the struggling fish onto the riverbank. Quick! Grab it, or it'll jump back into the river. Huo Linger anxiously shouted. Don't worry, it can't escape. Xiao Chen tied the fish with a grass rope. Seeing the fish securely tied, Huo Linger finally relaxed. It took her a while to calm down from the excitement. Then, a bright smile appeared on her face. Even during breakthroughs in her cultivation, she had never felt so excited. Xiao Chen carried the big fish and looked at Huo Linger. Their eyes met, and Xiao Chen's face also showed a bright smile, sharing the joy of the moment. At that moment, Huo Linger couldn't help but feel that the scenery was exceptionally beautiful. After catching another big fish weighing over 2 pounds, Xiao Chen pushed Huo Linger back home. Besides the braised fish Xiao Chen had mentioned earlier, he also specially made a bowl of fish soup. Quick! I'm starving. Huo Linger couldn't wait. Looking at the 2 large bowls of fragrant braised fish and fish soup on the table, she would have already started eating if she weren't currently unable to feed herself and had to rely on Xiao Chen. Here you go. Xiao Chen smiled helplessly. Have some fish soup first to moisten your throat. As he spoke, Xiao Chen carefully blew on a small bowl of fish soup with a spoon to prevent it from scalding Huo Linger. What are you doing? Huo Linger asked, puzzled. Can't you see? The fish soup is too hot, so I'm blowing on it for you, Xiao Chen replied matter-of-factly, looking at Huo Linger with a strange expression, as if to say, isn't it obvious? Can't you see it? Huo Linger was clearly taken aback, and it took her a while to react. I cultivate fire attribute techniques, so I'm not afraid of hot food. Huo Linger pursed her lips, trying to suppress her laughter. Xiao Chen was instantly embarrassed. It seemed he had gone too far. I don't know why, looking at Xiao Chen's somewhat embarrassed expression at this moment, I should have taken the opportunity to mock him fiercely and regain some ground. However, at this moment, Huo Linger inexplicably didn't feel like mocking Xiao Chen. Instead, she said seriously, although it's not necessary, thank you for your thoughtfulness. Oh, you're welcome. Suddenly, Huo Linger became so elegant that Xiao Chen was a little taken aback. Perhaps because both of their reactions were somewhat unusual, the atmosphere suddenly became frozen. After a long silence, the two looked at each other. Put. Ha ha ha. Both of them couldn't help but laugh. You suddenly being so elegant, I'm really not used to it. You suddenly not being sarcastic, I'm also not used to it. After breaking the deadlock, the atmosphere suddenly became harmonious. Dinner proceeded in this lively and warm atmosphere. Unconsciously, Huo Linger finished a whole braised fish and a large pot of fish soup, while Xiao Chen didn't eat much and basically fed Huo Linger. Looking at Xiao Chen's strange smile, Huo Linger felt both embarrassed and ashamed, confirming her identity as a glutton. In the following days, almost the same content was repeated. Xiao Chen dealt with household affairs in the morning, while Huo Linger quietly watched. In the afternoon, Xiao Chen would take Huo Linger for a walk by the river and then go fishing. The days were simple and peaceful. Huo Linger had never thought she could endure such a monotonous life, and yet she didn't feel any boredom. Instead, she hoped that this peaceful and simple life could continue. Outside the Haotian mirror. Although intimidated by the fire god king, no one dared to speak. But at this moment, someone couldn't help but sigh in their heart. If they didn't know the identities of the two beforehand, they would probably think they were a newlywed couple in love. The fire god king looked worriedly at the image in the Haotian mirror. It was only now that he knew how his imperial sister and Xiao Chen had met. He hoped that his sister could hold on to her beliefs and not be influenced by these memories. In the void, the fire empress Huo Linger's brows trembled, her eyes full of melancholic thoughts. She had thought her beliefs were firm enough, but when she truly faced the moments spent with Xiao Chen again, the soft strings in her heart were inevitably touched. Suddenly, the expression of the fire empress Huo Linger became pained and struggling. Undoubtedly, she still had feelings for Xiao Chen deep in her heart. However, when she thought of the emperor, who had been killed by Xiao Chun, and the innocent people of the imperial city who had suffered, she had to suppress her true emotions. She couldn't, and absolutely couldn't, show mercy to Xiao Chen. Watching Xiao Chun, who was already like a living dead in the imperial city, the Fire Empress will linger, eyes filled with tears, her expression pained yet resolute. Xiao Chen, I will definitely kill you, definitely. The Darklight Empress looked at the struggling and pained Fire Empress will linger, her face darkening. Although she feared no one, there were some things she had to prepare for in advance. Thousands of miles away, the Moon Shadow Empress Wen Yaxian, after seeing the image in the Haotian mirror, had a bitter expression, her emotions somewhat low. The heartwarming daily life of Xiao Chen and Huo Linger in the image was exactly the kind of life she had once dreamed of having with Xiao Chen. Simple and peaceful, free from worldly strife, yet happy and content. On the other hand, the Snow-Cold Empress, after seeing the image in the Haotian mirror, looked angry, her fists clenched, wishing she could go and settle the score with the now esteemed Fire Empress Huo Linger. Thinking of her beloved master Xiao Chun, who not only did the laundry and cooking for Huo Linger but also took care of her so attentively, she was itching with anger. After all, the fact that Master Xiao Chun fed her by hand was a treatment she had never experienced in the 10 years she had known him. As soon as her cultivation is restored, she will definitely go back to see the beautiful Tianhua Empress, Huo Linger. The gentle and elegant Taiyin Empress, Wen Yaxian, noticed the irritable mood of the Nangong Empress, Lang Ruoxue, and said in a deep voice, "Calm your mind and you will accelerate the recovery of your cultivation." Hearing this, Nangong Empress Lang Ruoxue knew that the most urgent task now was to quickly restore her cultivation, so she had to temporarily set aside her hostility towards the Tianhua Empress, Huo Linger. In the Haotian mirror, after a few days, Huo Linger's body gradually improved. Although she still couldn't move freely and still needed a wheelchair, at least her hands could move freely now. She no longer needed Xiao Chen to help her change clothes and wipe her body. Seeing Xiao Chen fishing for so many days, she also felt the itch to try it herself. It seemed like it was time to show off her skills. Today, Huo Linger specially asked Xiao Chen to make a fishing rod for her, wanting to compete with Xiao Chen to see who could catch bigger and more fish. Naturally, Xiao Chen was happy to see this. Winning or losing was not important to him. What mattered was that Huo Linger now had completely overcome her previous self-doubt and lack of confidence. Just competing is not interesting without any stakes. Huo Linger smiled and stared at Xiao Chen. Then what stakes do you want? Xiao Chen could tell that after a few stable days, Huo Linger wanted to stir things up again. He was curious to see what kind of trouble she wanted to cause. How about this, if I win, you will call me master from now on, and if you win, I will call you master from now on. Perhaps afraid that Xiao Chen would not agree, she added, of course, this mastery is limited to fishing. Huo Linger looked confident and full of herself as she gazed at Xiao Chen. Just the thought of Xiao Chen respectfully calling her master after she won made her feel elated. If Xiao Chen dared to tease her again in the future, she would accuse him of disrespecting his master. Master. Xiao Chen's expression turned gloomy. These two words instantly brought back painful memories from the past. He wondered if Lang Ruoxue and Wen Yaxian were still safe now. Seeing Xiao Chen silent and unresponsive for a long time, Huo Linger thought he was afraid of losing and didn't dare to agree. She quickly used a tactic to provoke him. If you're afraid of losing, then forget it. Xiao Chen came to his senses. He had been trying to keep Huo Linger from falling into the memories of past failures. But he himself was no different. He should also move on from those painful memories. Xiao Chen smiled faintly. Since you want to compete, I will accompany you to the end. Then it's settled, don't go back on your word if you lose. Huo Linger quickly seized the opportunity, afraid that Xiao Chen would change his mind. Xiao Chen found it somewhat amusing. He didn't know where Huo Linger's confidence came from, thinking that he would definitely win. Huo Linger's talent in cultivation was extraordinary, and being born into nobility, she had surely spent all her time on cultivation since childhood. Fishing was probably the first time in her life. And fishing was not as simple as it seemed. He looked forward to seeing Huo Linger's disappointed expression later. The fishing competition began. However, before the competition started, Huo Linger specifically asked Xiao Chen to stay away from her and not to encroach on her fishing spot. Xiao Chen was happy to comply and chose a spot more than 10 meters away from Huo Linger. The fishing competition officially began. Xiao Chen, before fishing, scattered the bait in the water. Huo Linger looked at him in confusion and asked, "What are you doing?" "Setting up the fishing spot," Xiao Chen replied without any concealment. Setting up the fishing spot? Huo Linger felt puzzled. She had never seen Xiao Chen set up a fishing spot like this before. But seeing Xiao Chen scatter things in the water and create ripples, she thought, is he a fool? Won't he scare away the fish like this? She didn't ask further and smugly started fishing herself. However, she soon noticed that the bait Xiao Chen used this time was not earthworms, but slippery loaches. This made Huo Linger very puzzled again. Mud loaches are so slippery, how could they possibly catch fish? Could it be that Xiao Chen is deliberately letting the water go? Hey, don't deliberately lose to me. Winning without a sense of accomplishment is not something I care about, Huo Linger shouted. Xiao Chen did not answer, just smiled faintly. Seeing this, although Huo Linger was angry, she did not shout again. Anyway, she still had to win first. After she became Xiao Chen's master, she would make Xiao Chen understand what it means to respect the teacher in the way. The competition was in full swing. However, things did not go as smoothly as Huo Linger had hoped. Obviously, when she usually watched Xiao Chen fishing, all he had to do was cast the hook into the water and then wait quietly for the fish to bite. But when she started fishing, she found that there were no fish biting at all. What's going on? Just in case, she even took the usual fishing spot of Xiao Chen. What's different from usual? Huo Linger felt very puzzled. However, as Huo Linger pondered, there was suddenly a reaction on the water surface, the fishing line was pulled, and there were ripples on the water. Huo Linger didn't have time to think too much, she focused on the water surface. After so many days of watching Xiao Chen fish, Huo Linger knew that fishing required timing. If the rod was pulled too early, the fish would easily escape. Therefore, she had to patiently wait for the right moment. The fishing line was being pulled by the fish in the water. When the time was right, Huo Linger suddenly lifted the fishing rod and flung the fish onto the riverbank. Haha, I did it! Huo Linger excitedly put the fish into the fish basket. Although the fish she caught was not big, only 3 fingers wide, it was her first successful catch. So she still felt very excited and confident about catching more and bigger fish next. For this reason, Huo Linger even wanted to show off to Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen, how about the fish I caught? Huo Linger's smile suddenly froze. Just because she saw Xiao Chen reeling in the line, and in Xiao Chen's hand was a big fish weighing nearly 3 or 4 catties. This is embarrassing. Huo Linger quickly threw the fish into the fish basket to avoid embarrassing herself in front of Xiao Chen. After Xiao Chen put the 3 or 4 catties big fish into the fish cage, he looked at Huo Linger. What did you just want to show me? Huo Linger did not answer, pretending not to have heard. Seeing this, Xiao Chen smiled. Without looking, he also guessed that Huo Linger had caught a fish and wanted to show off to him. As for why she suddenly fell silent, the answer was already very obvious. Obviously, after seeing the big fish in his hand, she felt embarrassed about catching a small fish. Xiao Chen then no longer paid attention to Huo Linger and focused on fishing. Huo Linger pulled a bitter melon face, no longer as confident and proud as before. Because she found that Xiao Chen was catching big fish one after another, each weighing at least 2 or 3 catties. And she only caught a few small fish, the largest of which was only 4 fingers wide. She could be said to have lost this fishing competition completely. Oh no, she's in trouble now. She will have to call Xiao Chen master in the future. She can't regain her face in front of Xiao Chen anymore. The sun was setting. Xiao Chen put away the fishing gear, carried the fish basket, and walked towards Huo Linger. It seems that I have won this competition, Xiao Chen said with a faint smile. Huo Linger looked very dejected with a bitter face. Perhaps her first half of life had been too smooth, she had almost never lost. This made her somewhat arrogant. It was the same in the inheritance ruins, and it was the same when she actively proposed a fishing competition with Xiao Chen. However, she had learned her lesson. Once bitten, twice shy, she would definitely not make the same mistake again. Thinking of this, Huo Linger looked at Xiao Chen with determination and said, I lost, master. Very well. Xiao Chen nodded, feeling deeply relieved. He was more pleased that Huo Linger could now face failure calmly, rather than being willing to gamble and accept defeat. What do you mean by very good? Huo Linger was not happy. Do you think I, Huo Linger, would resort to cheating? I didn't say that, don't slander me, Xiao Chen said with a smile, looking quite pleased. Bastard! Huo Linger cursed under her breath. Xiao Chen's character was carefree and uninhibited, as if nothing could affect his mood. This often made her feel defeated in front of him. Good disciple, it's getting late, we should go back, Xiao Chen said. Oh, Huo Linger replied indifferently, feeling very aggrieved. Although she was dissatisfied with Xiao Chen's current title for her, she was willing to accept defeat and did not want to be seen as untrustworthy. One day, she would make Xiao Chen feel just as frustrated. At that moment, Xiao Chen suddenly poured all the fish from his basket into the river. Ah, what are you doing? Huo Linger exclaimed, looking at Xiao Chen in confusion. It was a competition, and after the competition, they should naturally be returned to the river, Xiao Chen said matter-of-factly. Then what are we going to eat tonight? Huo Linger's face turned red. It seemed as if she was only thinking about food. Didn't you also catch fish in your basket? That's enough for us to eat tonight, Xiao Chen said, looking at Huo Linger's basket. Hearing this, Huo Linger's face turned even redder, and she hurriedly tried to hide the basket behind her. It was embarrassing to only have caught these small fish. Seeing this, Xiaochen found it somewhat amusing. "Don't you want to taste the fish you caught yourself? Come, let me see what fish you caught," Xiaochen said, reaching for Huo Linger's basket. Upon hearing Xiaochen's words, Huo Linger felt a warmth in her heart. It was clear that Xiaochen was trying to comfort her about losing the competition. But the small fish she caught were really not presentable. Unfortunately, she was unable to move freely at the moment, and could only watch as Xiaochen took the basket away. At that moment, Huo Linger felt despondent, prepared to see how Xiaochen would mock her. However, to her surprise, Xiaochen looked at the small fish in the basket and said seriously, "Not bad, they're quite big." Big? Huo Linger felt speechless. The biggest fish she caught was only about 4 fingers wide, while the fish Xiaochen caught earlier were at least 2 or 3 caddies each. Xiaochen's words were clearly meant to comfort her, but she couldn't find any joy in it, and instead felt that Xiaochen was treating her like a fool. Seeing Huo Linger's embarrassed expression, Xiaochen knew she had misunderstood him again. So he had to explain earnestly, "Fish come in many varieties, and some fish can only grow to be 3 or 4 fingers wide when they reach adulthood, like the ones you caught. Don't be fooled by their small size, because when used to make soup, their taste is even more delicious than the larger fish." "Oh, I see," Huo Linger said, looking puzzled. But seeing Xiaochen's serious expression, she realized he wasn't lying. This time, she was truly embarrassed by her lack of basic knowledge. "All right, it's getting late. If you want to know more, I'll explain it to you in detail when we get back," Xiaochen said. "After all, I'm your fishing master now." Xiaochen's face lit up with a bright smile. Huo Linger was infected by Xiaochen's smile and couldn't help but respond, "Yes, master." Dinner time. Xiaochen served a bowl of fish soup in front of Huo Linger. "Try it, this is the fish you caught yourself." Without needing Xiaochen to say anything, Huo Linger was already eager to taste it. Huo Linger scooped up a spoonful of fish soup and put it in her mouth. Huo Linger couldn't help but hum in enjoyment. This fish soup was completely different from the one Xiaochen had made before. Not only was it more delicious, but it also had a sweet taste. Huo Linger was starting to regret. She felt a bit sorry for losing to Xiaochen in their fishing competition. She shouldn't have competed with Xiaochen on who could catch more and bigger fish. If it was about who could make the tastier fish, then she would have won. She had been too hasty. Looking at Huo Linger's face filled with regret, Xiaochen couldn't help but tease, "What, feeling unsatisfied again? No, losing is losing. I, Huo Linger, am not someone who can't accept defeat." Huo Linger's attitude was very tough. She didn't want Xiaochen to think she was someone who couldn't accept losing. However, she didn't say that this master-disciple relationship was permanent. If she surpassed Xiaochen in fishing skills, Xiaochen would have no reason to be her master anymore. One day, she would definitely win back. In the following days, Huo Linger almost competed with Xiaochen in fishing every day. However, she soon realized that her previous thoughts seemed naive again. The content of their fishing competitions kept changing, but Xiaochen won every time. Whether it was catching big or small fish, or specific species, Xiaochen could catch whatever he wanted. Huo Linger finally felt despair. At that moment, she finally accepted her fate. It seemed that she would have to call Xiaochen her master for the rest of her life. However, as time passed, her body had greatly improved. Now she no longer needed a wheelchair and could move freely. For her at this moment, the most important thing was to restore her cultivation. However, it was at this moment that she suddenly realized that during the time she spent with Xiaochen, he seemed to have never spent time on cultivation. Or in other words, Xiaochen had never cultivated. Although Xiaochen's cultivation was not high, only at the qi refining stage, cultivation was a path of no progress, no regression. If one did not diligently cultivate to consolidate, their cultivation would regress. Did Xiaochen not care at all? Soon, Huo Linger thought that with Xiaochen's status, he probably couldn't obtain cultivation techniques beyond the qi refining stage. And with Xiaochen's attitude, he probably had no expectations for cultivation. Therefore, he had completely stopped cultivating. Thinking of this, Huo Linger decided not to let Xiaochen continue to give up on himself. On one hand, Xiaochen had saved her life, and repaying his kindness was only natural. On the other hand, for some inexplicable inner feelings, she didn't want Xiaochen to be an ordinary mortal for the rest of his life. And if she were to teach Xiaochen cultivation in the future, wouldn't that make her Xiaochen's master in cultivation? In that case, she would have saved some face. After making the decision, Huo Linger found Xiaochen and proudly said, "Xiaochen, I believe your cultivation has been stuck at the qi refining stage for a long time. In consideration of your saving my life, as long as you are willing to call me master, I will teach you the cultivation techniques beyond the qi refining stage." Huolinger thought that even if Xiao Chen didn't shed tears of gratitude, he would at least be excited. After all, for a cultivator, cultivation techniques were extremely precious. However, things turned out completely different from what she had imagined. After hearing Huolinger's words, Xiao Chen's expression looked very calm, and there was not even a hint of excitement in his eyes. He just looked at Huolinger and said calmly, "It seems that your body has already recovered. If there's nothing else, you can leave." Huolinger was dumbfounded. She never expected that after speaking so boldly, Xiao Chen's reaction would not only be so indifferent, but he even issued an order for her to leave. Huolinger couldn't help but reflect. Could it be that her attitude just now had angered Xiao Chen? Yes, Xiao Chen was originally a person who was indifferent to fame and fortune. Perhaps he didn't have such a strong desire to pursue higher levels of cultivation. Huolinger's attitude instantly softened, and she said softly, "I admit that I spoke a bit loudly just now, but my intention was to repay your life-saving grace. I believe you must also be in great need of cultivation techniques after the qi refining stage." Hearing this, Xiao Chen calmly said, "My cultivation has always been stuck at the qi refining stage, indeed because I lack cultivation techniques for the later stages. But for me, these things are not too important. I have never had much interest in cultivation. Perhaps being an ordinary person suits me better." Xiao Chen did not tell Huolinger about the demonic consciousness in his body. On one hand, it had nothing to do with Huolinger, and on the other hand, he did not want her to worry. And indeed, he had no real interest in cultivation. Being able to live a peaceful life in this secluded place, he was already content. After listening to Xiao Chen's words, Huolinger furrowed her brows. Xiao Chen was even more difficult to understand than she had imagined. If another cultivator had told her that they didn't like cultivation and didn't want to pursue higher realms, she would have thought that person was very hypocritical. But when these words came from Xiao Chen, she couldn't argue. Because during the time she spent with Xiao Chen, she could feel that he was a person who was indifferent to fame and fortune, living a peaceful life without many desires. This was exactly what she liked about Xiao Chen, but now it had become an obstacle between them. Huolinger was not willing to give up. She asked cautiously, "Is it because I asked you to call me master that made you unhappy? If you don't want to, then forget what I said. I am still willing to teach you cultivation techniques after the qi refining stage." Seeing Huolinger suddenly become so accommodating and gentle, Xiao Chen felt somewhat uncomfortable. He smiled helplessly and said, "You misunderstood. I wasn't angry just now, and what I said wasn't out of anger. I really think that if your injuries are almost healed, you should go home for a visit. I'm sure your father must be very worried about you." Hearing this, Huolinger fell silent. Because what Xiao Chen said was true, she was the most beloved princess of the Tianhua kingdom. She had been out for so long without any news, and her father was probably very anxious and had sent out a large number of people to search for her. She really should go back and let them know she was safe. But Huolinger looked at Xiao Chen, her eyes filled with reluctance. During the time she spent with Xiao Chen, although it was plain and simple, she didn't find it dull. Instead, she felt very happy and joyful every day. This carefree feeling of forgetting everything was something she had never experienced before. And towards Xiao Chen, she also had very special feelings in her heart. She didn't know if this was what they called love between a man and a woman. She only knew that when she saw Xiao Chen by her side, she felt inexplicably calm and happy, wanting to see him every moment. Thinking of this, Huolinger looked at Xiao Chen with determination and said seriously, "Xiao Chen, why don't you come back to the Tianhua kingdom with me?" Hearing this, Xiao Chen was stunned for a moment. After a while, a hearty smile appeared on his face. "Thank you for your kind invitation, but I am a rather introverted person and don't like too much interaction with others." This was not a lie, but the deeper reason was that he was afraid that the demonic consciousness in his body would suddenly act up again. Huolinger felt a bit annoyed. When had she ever been so humble and accommodating to someone? And most importantly, this person didn't agree with her. She also had a temper. Since Xiao Chen did not agree to her, she had to force the issue. Xiao Chen had to go, whether he wanted to or not. However, her cultivation had not fully recovered yet, so she decided to wait for a while and plan carefully before making her move. For now, she would pretend to confuse Xiao Chen to prevent him from leaving early. "Well, since you don't want to go, I won't force you," Huolinger said with a disappointed look. "After a few more days when my cultivation is fully restored, I should leave as well." Watching Huolinger's despondent expression, Xiao Chen sighed deeply. The time spent with Huolinger may have been the happiest time he had ever had. However, all good things must come to an end. He wished Huolinger well in the future. As for the remaining days, he decided to treat Huolinger well. And so, Huolinger spent the next few days with Xiao Chen, living a life like a princess. Xiao Chen would prepare whatever she wanted to eat, and he no longer teased her with harsh words. He tried to fulfill her every request. Huolinger was delighted. These days were like a fairy tale. At the same time, it strengthened her determination. She was determined to take Xiao Chen back with her. Before they knew it, it was time to part ways. Xiao Chen escorted Huolinger to the thatched cottage. All feasts must come to an end. I wish you a long and prosperous life on the path of immortality, Xiao Chen said calmly as they parted. Thank you for your care during these days. Huolinger smiled at Xiao Chen, showing no signs of sadness. Seeing Huolinger's cheerful smile, Xiao Chen felt that something was not quite right, and his eyelids twitched inexplicably. Especially when he saw the meaningful look in Huolinger's eyes, he had a growing sense of unease. Did Huolinger plan to settle all the grievances she had with him before leaving? Now that her cultivation had fully recovered, although he didn't know her exact level, he was sure it was much higher than his. If Huolinger really intended to harm him, he could only accept it. However, from what he knew of Huolinger, apart from her somewhat arrogant and irritable personality, she was reasonable and kind-hearted. Perhaps he was overthinking it. It was just a small favor, you don't need to worry too much, Xiao Chen said calmly, though he felt a tinge of sadness inside. After this parting, they might never meet again. After listening to Xiao Chen's words, Huolinger chuckled. No, how can I not be grateful for saving my life? What do you mean? Xiao Chen felt that there was more to Huolinger's words. What do I mean? Hee, you'll find out soon, Huolinger smirked. It's getting late, we should be on our way. We? Before Xiao Chen could understand what she meant by we, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in the back of his neck and instantly passed out. Let's go. Huolinger produced a large sack from somewhere and put it over Xiao Chen's head. Then, she summoned her spiritual weapon, the fire spirit sword, from her storage ring. Carrying Xiao Chen, she soared into the distance on her flying sword. Outside the Haotian mirror, everyone watching was amazed by the boldness of the Fire Empress Huolinger. She was a woman of strong emotions and clear love and hate, a true heroine among women. In the void above, the Fire Empress Huolinger was almost at her wits' end. Her dark history was being displayed openly to the world. Even though she was now revered as the Fire Empress, she still felt ashamed and embarrassed. However, soon her expression turned somewhat despondent. If she hadn't acted rashly and brought Xiao Chen back to the imperial city, perhaps none of the subsequent disasters would have occurred. Her father would not have died, and half of the innocent people in the imperial city would not have perished in vain. However, between her and Xiao Chen, they would not be able to reconcile, leading to this irreparable step today. Ultimately, she is also the sinner who caused the tragedy of Tianhua country. Therefore, since then, she has been working hard and vowed to revive Tianhua country. Yes, she did it. Today's Tianhua country is no longer the unknown small country it used to be, but the powerful Tianhua god dynasty that dominates the entire cultivation world. Now, as long as she kills Xiao Chen to comfort her father and the innocent people in the spirit world, everything will come to a perfect end. Shameless, truly shameless. Thousands of miles away, Empress Nangong, cold as snow, cursed angrily. Although I don't know what happened between Master and the Tianhua Empress later, it is clear that Master was forcibly taken away by her. Regardless of what happened afterwards, the Tianhua Empress herself has an undeniable responsibility, but she has pushed everything onto Master, which is truly shameless. Empress Taiyin, Wenya Xian, also nodded in agreement, expressing support for Empress Nangong's words. Master Xiao Chen originally just wanted a peaceful life without any disputes, but he was forcibly involved in the subsequent events by Huolinger. Although she didn't know what happened later, it is definitely unjust to push all these mistakes onto Master Xiao Chen. Empress Nangong, cold as snow, was furious at this moment, regretting that her cultivation had recovered too slowly. Otherwise, she would definitely seek an explanation from the Tianhua Empress, Huolinger. Many people in the world have similar thoughts to the two of them, feeling that the Tianhua Empress, Huolinger, also has significant problems. However, Huolinger is now the powerful Tianhua Empress, and no one dares to criticize her. In fact, without anyone reminding her, Huolinger herself is very aware that she bears an undeniable responsibility for the disaster in Tianhua country. She is not qualified to sit in her current position. Therefore, after killing Xiao Chen and comforting the innocent people in the spirit world, she will abdicate and pass the throne to the Tianhua king. She will return to the thatched cottage where she once lived with Xiao Chen and end her life there. Tianhua king looked at the changes in the emotions on the face of the Tianhua Empress, Huolinger, above the void, and as her biological brother, he quickly guessed what she was thinking. He couldn't help but sigh lightly. Although he really wanted to tell his sister that none of this was her fault, he also understood very well what kind of person his sister was. Once she made a decision, it would be impossible to change. Perhaps, this was already the best outcome. Returning to the scene in the Haotian mirror once again, Xiao Chen woke up slowly. As soon as he opened his eyes, he met the fiery gaze of Huolinger. "You're awake. You must be hungry. I'll call the waiter to bring some food in." Xiao Chen did not answer. Instead, he looked around at the unfamiliar environment and frowned. Where are we now? Obviously, he had realized that he had been forcibly taken away by Huolinger. "Within the borders of Tianhua country, we will reach the imperial city in another day," Huolinger said with a smile. Xiao Chen sighed. This kind of thing, probably only Huolinger could do. No wonder he always felt that something was wrong with Huolinger's expression earlier. She was planning this. "You go out for a while. I want to be alone for a bit," Xiao Chen sighed. Oh, Huolinger was very obedient. Xiao Chen not confronting her had already surprised her greatly. Anyway, they were already within the borders of Tianhua country, and even if Xiao Chen wanted to escape, he couldn't escape from her grasp. There was no need for her to be so forceful, and Xiao Chen really needed some time to accept this reality. After Huolinger left, Xiao Chen suddenly felt a long unseen anomaly in his body. It was the demonic consciousness trying to take control of his body again. It seems that after a long silence, this demonic consciousness has regained some vitality. Feeling the presence of people around, it wants to start causing trouble again. Xiao Chen immediately took out the dagger he carried with him and fiercely stabbed it into his thigh to keep himself alert. Creak, the door opened. Huolinger stood at the door with food in her hands. When she saw the scene in front of her, she was instantly stunned. "Even if you don't want to go with me, you don't need to self-harm, do you?" Huolinger never expected that Xiao Chen would express his dissatisfaction in this self-harming way. At that moment, her heart felt as if it had been twisted, feeling extremely uncomfortable. If she had known in advance that Xiao Chen would hurt himself like this, she would never have silently taken Xiao Chen away. Looking at Xiao Chen's thigh bleeding profusely, Huolinger's eyes instantly became moist. At that moment, her heart was also bleeding. After placing the food on the table, Huolinger looked pitifully at Xiao Chen. "Let's discuss anything properly. Please don't hurt yourself anymore, okay?" Xiao Chen was taken aback. Obviously, Huolinger misunderstood that he was protesting by self-harming. After pondering for a moment, Xiao Chen informed Huolinger about the demonic consciousness. On the one hand, it was to dispel Huolinger's misunderstanding. On the other hand, it was to prevent him from not being able to suppress the demonic consciousness. With Huolinger's cultivation, she could control him to prevent him from harming innocent people. After hearing Xiao Chen's explanation, Huolinger felt relieved. As long as Xiao Chen's self-harm was not because of her, she felt much more comfortable. As for the demonic consciousness in Xiao Chen's body, it was not a big deal in Huolinger's opinion. After all, the demonic consciousness had not yet grown, so it was relatively easy to control. Moreover, they were very fortunate that the treasure of their country, Tianhua, had the ability to remove any evil and dark things from the world. In this way, she had a legitimate reason to invite Xiao Chen to the imperial city. After informing Xiao Chen that the treasure of their country, Tianhua, could remove the demonic consciousness from his body, Huolinger asked, "What do you think? Do you want to go to the imperial city with me? Do I have a second choice?" Xiao Chen smiled helplessly. He knew that even if he said he didn't want to go, Huolinger would definitely take him there. After all, he had already been taken to the border of Tianhua by Huolinger. But if his demonic consciousness could really be removed, then there was no harm in going to the imperial city of Tianhua. Looking at Huolinger in front of him, who had been smiling and looking at him from start to finish, Xiao Chen felt a sinking in his heart. He was afraid that he would never be able to leave after going there. If his demonic consciousness could really be removed, then he should indeed re-evaluate his relationship with Huolinger. He was not a fool, he could see the change in Huolinger's eyes towards him. However, due to the influence of the demonic consciousness, he had always chosen to evade and ignore it. But even if his demonic consciousness was really removed, it did not mean that there would be no obstacles between him and Huolinger. He was just an ordinary person with average aptitude, while Huolinger was the princess of Tianhua, with extraordinary talent and much loved. At this moment, Huolinger did not know Xiao Chen's worries. After getting Xiao Chen's agreement to go back to the imperial city with her, she laughed carefreely. Xiao Chen did not want to make Huolinger unhappy, so he didn't say anything and suppressed everything in his heart. Although Huolinger was laughing carefreely, it did not mean that her heart was also carefree. Soon, she noticed that Xiao Chen's mood suddenly became somewhat desolate. "Your complexion doesn't look good. What's wrong?" Huolinger said softly. Hearing this, Xiao Chen restrained his emotions, pressed his still bleeding thigh, and looked at Huolinger irritably. "With blood flowing all the time, can my complexion look good? You didn't even inform me in advance and just brought me here. I didn't even bring any medicine for treating injuries." The fire spirit suddenly stood up. How could she forget about this? She was so happy that Xiao Chen agreed to go back to the imperial city with her that she forgot Xiao Chen was still injured. It seemed that she was really thoughtless. She quickly went to the shop and got some golden wound medicine and bandages to help Xiao Chen dress his wound. After everything was done, the fire spirit grinned and said, "Sorry, I was just too happy and lost control." "Don't let it happen again," Xiao Chen said irritably. But looking at the silly expression of the fire spirit in front of him, Xiao Chen inexplicably felt a bit cute. "Okay, I will consult with you before doing anything in the future," the fire spirit said with a smile, feeling quite pleased. "Alright, let's eat." "Okay." After resting for a night, the next morning, the fire spirit took Xiao Chen to the imperial city of the Tianhua kingdom on her sword. Feeling the strong wind whistling around them, Xiao Chen couldn't help but sigh again at the fire spirit's talent in cultivation. Although one could fly on a sword after reaching the foundation building realm, being able to dash freely with another person in the sky at 100 zhang high, like the fire spirit, meant that her cultivation had reached at least the mortal shedding realm, or even the dragon transformation realm. Thinking back to when the fire spirit said she had reached the foundation building realm at the age of 8, such talent could definitely be called the pride of the heavens. Xiao Chen's expression became somewhat complicated, and he felt some emotions that he had never experienced before. There might be some gaps that could never be bridged in a lifetime. Soon, the fire spirit brought Xiao Chen to the imperial city of the Tianhua kingdom. Who goes there? Two soldiers in flame armor were about to step forward to stop them. Flying in the imperial city was prohibited. However, as the most beloved princess of the Tianhua kingdom, the fire spirit obviously had privileges. "Open your eyes wide and see who I am. How dare you block the path of this princess?" The fire spirit scolded loudly, displaying a spoiled and domineering princess image to the fullest. "It's the third princess." After seeing the fire spirit's appearance clearly, the two soldiers in flame armor quickly stepped back. "Humph, consider yourselves lucky." After a cold snort, the fire spirit flew into the imperial city. Ahem. Xiao Chen coughed lightly, looking a bit awkward. He felt like he was riding on the fire spirit's coattails. At this moment, the triumphant expression on the fire spirit's face suddenly froze, and she realized that Xiao Chen had been behind her all along. Did this mean that Xiao Chen had seen her arrogant behavior clearly? Oh no, what would Xiao Chen think of her? Ahem. To cover up the embarrassment, the fire spirit also coughed lightly. I'm not usually like that. I was just a little impatient to take you to the palace, so my temper was a bit bad. I understand, Xiao Chen nodded calmly. Ha, it's good that you understand. The fire spirit smiled slyly. In this way, the two of them flew freely in the imperial city until they finally entered the palace. What's that? Their flamboyant behavior naturally attracted the attention of the palace guards. In the entire Tianhua kingdom, perhaps only the current favorite third princess, the fire spirit, dared to fly freely in the imperial palace without any scruples. And during this time, the third princess, the fire spirit, had been missing, driving the current emperor crazy. Therefore, when they saw the third princess, the fire spirit, someone immediately reported this news to the emperor. The two of them stopped in front of a palace called Chang'e Palace. It was only at this moment that Xiao Chen learned that the fire spirit was the Chang'e princess of the Tianhua kingdom. From the two characters Chang'e, it was evident that the emperor of the Tianhua kingdom doted on this princess. As soon as they appeared in front of the palace, a group of palace maids and eunuchs hurried forward to greet them. "Third princess, you're finally back. I've been so worried these days, I couldn't eat or sleep. I was almost driven to madness." "Really, Guamama? You seem to have gained some weight, haven't you?" Huolinger looked at the plump old woman in front of her with a smile. Guamama's expression stiffened at the words. To be honest, with the Demon King Huolinger absent, she could hardly enjoy a few peaceful days. But as an old hand who had been in the palace for decades, she certainly couldn't speak the truth. Otherwise, who knows what methods the Demon King Huolinger would use to torment her. "Third princess, please don't tease this old body. His Majesty has been sending people everywhere to find you. Now that you're back, you should go and see him as soon as possible." Guamama changed the subject. "Right," Huolinger replied seriously. Since she had returned, she should indeed go and report to her father. "Xiao Chen, I'll go find my father first. You wait for me in Chang'e Palace," Huolinger said to Xiao Chen. "Okay," Xiao Chen nodded, knowing that was all he could do for now. "Guamama, take good care of me. If there is any negligence, I won't spare you," Huolinger warned Guamama sternly. "This, third princess, Chang'e Palace is your sleeping quarters. It might not be appropriate for a man to be there." Guamama hesitated. "What's inappropriate about it? Xiao Chen is not a stranger, he is my master." "Enough, I don't want to waste time with you. If my master is neglected, you'll see how I deal with you when I come back." With that, Huolinger looked at Xiao Chun and said with a smile, "I'll go find my father first. You can rest in my sleeping quarters if you're tired. If anyone dares to disrespect you while I'm away, tell me when I get back, and I'll deal with her." With these words, including Guamama, the palace maids and eunuchs were all stunned. "Are you sure this is your master? Does this sound like something a disciple would say to their master?" Even Xiao Chen, as the person involved, looked somewhat uncomfortable after hearing Huolinger's words. A girl's bedroom is a very private place, especially for a princess like Huolinger. At this moment, to outsiders, they might think he was Huolinger's lover. When Huolinger left, the palace maids and eunuchs looked at Xiao Chen strangely. Xiao Chen didn't explain anything, as he knew that no one would believe him at this point. "Master Xiao, Guamama was now in a dilemma. She didn't dare to go against Huolinger's words, but she also didn't dare to let a man like Xiao Chen enter Changlo Palace. After all, if the emperor found out about this, they would all lose their heads." Xiao Chun saw Guamama's dilemma and naturally wouldn't make things difficult for her. "Guamama, I'll wait for Princess Huo in the small courtyard nearby," Xiao Chen said. Seeing Xiao Chen's understanding, Guamama was also very grateful. She quickly ordered the palace maids and eunuchs by her side to take good care of him. On the other side, Huolinger arrived at the study. Sitting in the study was a middle-aged man with a majestic appearance. He was the emperor of Tenhua Kingdom, Emperor Hua. Emperor Hua's brows were furrowed, showing some distress and impatience. However, when he heard the light footsteps outside the hall, his distressed and impatient emotions instantly subsided. Earlier, he had already received a report from the imperial guards that the third princess, Huolinger, had returned. If nothing unexpected happened, the person coming to find him now would be his most beloved daughter, Huolinger. "Father, I miss you so much." Without any announcement or obstruction from the guards outside the study, Huolinger rushed into the study. You're still so unruly." Emperor Huo looked helpless, but his eyes were full of indulgence. After not seeing her for a few days, he couldn't bear to punish his daughter, Huolinger. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, Emperor Hua asked, "Where have you been these days, you little troublemaker?" Hearing this, Huolinger put